saying that you were about to embark on adoption, but you had to hold off because of the cancer. But now you have adopted 2 boys? Mm-hmm. How's it going?
Well, it's not legal yet, so yeah, it's going. It's been a challenge, but it's been amazing. They're fun.
Do you like having young kids?
Well, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, but again, they're not quite ours yet, but it's just a matter of paperwork now. But it's a challenge, but they're amazing.
Don't you feel like you're doing life in reverse?
Absolutely. I've never done anything by the book, so why start now? I know I'm too old for this. I should be a grandparent, not a parent, but, that's how it worked out, and we're lucky for it. They're lucky they don't know it yet, but it's going to be fun.
Thank you for listening to the interview from the BBC World Service. Until the next time, bye for now.
From the BBC, that was the interview. I'm Saroja Coelho. CBC News is next.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us live from downtown Winnipeg on CBC. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. Look at the shot of that sky on YouTube, would you? Looks like the sun's coming up, and so it will. We're going to have a sunny start, a mix of sun and cloud this afternoon in Winnipeg, and a risk of a thunderstorm late this afternoon. It's going to be windy again, wind southwest 30 to 50. Our high today, 26 with humidex 28, so really sticky. Brandon sunny today as well. Also risk of a thunderstorm, windy, and a high 25. And up in Thompson, sun and cloud and a high of 17 for your Tuesday. Let's say good morning to the team on the morning show, which is on, by the way, till 8:37. If you have a traffic problem between now and then, you're calling Sierra Sanders. She's picking up the commuter line. She's our director of the show. Good morning, Sierra. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who's our senior tech behind the controls. Abby will be on the air covering the weather. And good morning to Brad Lillies, waving hello to you as well. Brad is our YouTube producer. All right, let's go to Heather Wells now and find out what's been making news and developing in stories overnight. And she is in our news center. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a pair of sisters from Pinemutang First Nation are among those fighting wildfires in Manitoba this summer. 21-year-old Heather Anderson and her sister Delilah were trained last year in Gypsumville. Recently, they were in eastern Manitoba fighting wildfires. She says, Anderson says the days are long and exhausting. The sisters, both young mothers, and say they hope to be a good example for their children. Winnipeggers may not get a choice about whether they want the city to install new smart water meters in their homes. A new report recommends against giving people the choice to opt out of that program. We're going to hear from a city councillor coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Current temperature in Winnipeg is 9 degrees, by the way. We have light rain in Dauphin this morning, and it's clear in Brandon and 4. Up in Thompson right now, mostly cloudy, and 4 degrees currently in Thompson. Well, we also have a city councillor on the show today, but for a totally different reason. Janice Lukes is going to join us. There was some criticism yesterday to how the grass cutting bylaw was handled for one East Elmwood man. He came home, he was surprised to see a city worker cutting his backyard. So they reached over, opened the fence, and went back there. So we'll find out more about that. In addition, this morning on the program, we will have a closer look at the ongoing volatile situation in the Middle East and the impact of U.S. involvement. So that's in the first hour, as we've been updating that daily. And World Report is next.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlenger, sitting in for Tom Power. Misty Copeland was the first Black woman to become principal dancer at American Ballet Theatre 10 years ago. We'll talk about her incredible career ahead of her retirement from ballet this fall.
I remember just that feeling of accomplishment.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The truce between Israel and Iran appears to be faltering. The deal was proposed by U.S. President Donald Trump. But 2 hours after coming into effect, Israel accused Iran of violations and is vowing to retaliate. This man in Tehran wants it to hold. I hope they remain committed to the ceasefire, he says, because it's in our interest and theirs as well. Speaking with reporters this morning, Trump said both Israel and Iran violated the ceasefire. CBC senior international correspondent Margaret Evans brings us the latest from Jerusalem.
The ceasefire announced on social media overnight by U.S. President Donald Trump came with few details, and according to the Israeli military, has already been breached by Iran, an allegation that the General Staff of Iran's armed forces has denied. In his post, the U.S. president said the agreement involved two 12-hour ceasefires. After 24 hours, hostilities would formally end. Israelis hearing the news reacted with relief.
I'm so tired. Everyone is tired. We just want to have some peace of mind for us, for the Iranian people, for the Palestinians, for everyone in the region.
But air raid sirens sounded in northern Israel hours after the start of the ceasefire deadline, with the IDF reporting they'd intercepted a single missile. The defense minister, Israel Katz, says he's ordered the military to respond with full force and powerful strikes against targets in the heart of Tehran. The ceasefire announcement came hours after Iran launched strikes against a U.S. air base in Qatar, the promised retaliation against the U.S. for joining Israeli attacks on Iran's nuclear sites. The somewhat limited attack without casualties has been widely interpreted as a sign from Iran that it wants to de-escalate the conflict. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Jerusalem.
The developments in the Middle East are being closely watched by the Iranian diaspora. Hundreds of thousands of Iranians live in California. Los Angeles is home to the largest community of Iranians outside of Iran. As Steve Futterman reports, many people in LA are optimistic about the future of their homeland.
For the last 2 weeks, they have been following the events in the Middle East.
Right now, for sure, my family are in there. My brothers, my sisters are there.
Yesterday, Mohammed, who doesn't want his last name used, who first lived in Montreal and Calgary before moving here, was watching a Persian news channel.
Of course, I'm watching the news, what's happening.
Since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Los Angeles has become a destination point for tens of thousands of Iranians. Last night, with all the talk of a ceasefire, Jonathan Rad, who came here as a child, was hoping it will go further.
Best case scenario, the Ayatollah is out. That could lead to total peace. It could.
The people we spoke with all support the U.S. attack on nuclear sites.
I'm very happy. I'm so sorry for damage, but I'm happy for future.
For many, there are mixed emotions, especially Iranian-American Jews. This woman has close friends in Iran and a sister in Tel Aviv. She says the majority of those living in Iran want regime change.
They cannot get rid of this regime, so they need help, and thanks to Israel and America, they can achieve that goal.
And you think that's going to get rid of the regime?
Yes.
Many we spoke with have been hoping for a change for more than 40 years and feel they may be closer than ever before. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
U.S. President Donald Trump's return to NATO Leaders Summit is making waves. The leaders of Japan and 3 other Indo-Pacific countries are no longer joining the military alliance at The Hague. Their reasons were vague, but U.S. actions in the Middle East were likely to overshadow the issues they had planned to discuss. And it appears NATO member countries are trying to appease the U.S. president by meeting Trump's demands for boosted defense spending. Murray Brewster has that story.
Originally, it was expected to be a broad, bold agenda focusing on Russia. This year's NATO summit, however, has been narrowed in scope to perhaps a single catchphrase: show me the money.
I'm not comfortable at all with the 5% figure.
Bart de Wever is the Prime Minister of Belgium, who remains a little gobsmacked at what allies are being asked to invest.
We've jumped to 2%. We're more or less in the same situation as Canada.
Canada arrives at the summit fresh off Prime Minister Mark Carney's pledge to increase defense spending by $9.3 billion this year in order to meet the existing 2% target. Member nations have agreed to increase the target to a combined 5% of GDP, 3.5% for direct military funding, and an additional 1.5% for defense infrastructure. They'll meet that pledge by 2035. Veteran Canadian diplomat, now Senator Peter Beam, says avoiding the target will be hard in the current climate with the Trump administration.
There may not be much of a choice.
In a change from past years, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will be invited to only attend this year's leaders' dinner and not the meeting of allies. Despite the downgrading, NATO insists Ukraine remains a top priority. Murray Brewster, CBC News, The Hague.
Japan is conducting a missile test in its own territory for the first time. Army officials say a Type 88 missile was test-fired. It's designed to target ships from a short range. Japan says it is working to bolster its defense systems and deter potential attacks from China. The country has tested missiles before, but only in the territories of its defense partners like the U.S. Thailand's military has closed the country's border with Cambodia. It says it is increasing security screenings and blocking tourists. The dispute between the two countries has been escalating since last month after a Cambodian soldier was shot and killed at the border. One Cambodian woman says the closure hurts people from both sides. Many rely on cross-border trade to earn their living. Now only students and patients requiring medical treatment are allowed through. The effects of a catastrophic failure at the Eagle Gold Mine in Yukon are still being felt downstream. It's been 1 year since part of the site collapsed. Cyanide spilled into waterways surrounding the mine. It caused environmental contamination and a downturn in Yukon's economy. As Cheryl Kawaja reports, people in the nearby village of Mayo are still grieving and angry.
And these are the wild roses here. They just came out. Everything's kind of late this year.
Gathering traditional medicine near her village of Mayo, Yukon, Crystal Prophet says it's all still very raw for her.
We used to go up that way and call moose our hunting grounds. And with that whole spill, it went into the underground water, right?
The Eagle Gold Mine was the largest operating mine in the Yukon. It produced gold by dousing a heap of crushed ore with cyanide solution. But the heap collapsed in a massive slide, cyanide flowing. It was close to shift change, and no workers died, but hundreds of jobs were lost. For many citizens of the Nacho-Naik Dun First Nation, it's the environmental destruction that hurts most.
Pissed me off because of their neglect, all the devastation.
It's a catastrophe.
John Stryker is the Yukon Minister of Mines. There is now water treatment happening, but he says it will be a long time before all the cyanide is gone. Stryker says new water storage helped prep for the spring freshet, the recent snowmelt. He says there were concerns for a second slide with the melt.
Now we've just made it through freshet. We did manage to not overwhelm the system. I always say knock on wood.
An independent review is expected in the coming weeks. But for many, like Prophet in Mayo, the what and why of the mine failure is of little consequence.
A lot of people are grieving, and for people to even want to talk to you about it right now is so fresh,
Cheryl Kawaja, CBC News, Whitehorse.
That guitar intro is unmistakable. It can only be U2's lead guitarist, The Edge, opening Where the Streets Have No Name. And The Edge, or David Howell Evans as he's known to his parents, is marking a milestone. This week he officially became an Irish citizen. The Edge has lived in Ireland for 62 years, and yes, he is a key member of one of the country's most famous bands, but technically he was born in England to Welsh parents, and he moved to Ireland when he was 1. Evans told reporters yesterday he has always considered himself to be Irish. He was just a little late with the paperwork. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News Anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Where the streets have no name.
Oh no, we faded U2 for our theme. Feels wrong. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Welcome to the morning show. This is Information Radio, live from downtown Winnipeg. Thanks for being here. Tuesday morning, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. This hour on the program, we're going to talk to someone who battled brain cancer and is now helping organize a walk for other survivors. What stigmas does she want to bust about having a brain tumor, and what was her experience like, and how much does it help to get together and support each other? We'll hear all about it. That's this half hour on the show. Also, this half hour, we will, as I mentioned, have a closer look at the volatility in the Middle East right now, the impact of U.S. involvement and the complicated nature of this moment. So stay tuned. We'll have a full interview. Plus, we'll hear from a local Iranian human rights activist concerned about family back home this hour. That's coming up on the show about 20 to 7. So stay tuned. It's all still ahead right here on CBC in Winnipeg. And the days we're counting down the days now, right? Tuesday morning, that means Flin Flon residents. Tomorrow's your day where you'll be starting to return to your city up north. So we'll get into the weather forecast in a moment and also look at what tomorrow looks like throughout the show because we know it's a big day for travel. All right, let's get into what's happening in our news center today and developing headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, a Gimli flight school has been banned from training more pilots. Transport Canada says it revoked LS Airways Flight Academy certification in the interest of public safety. Wayne Liu says he was among the students who blew the whistle on the school. He says in a lawsuit, its owner told him to fake flight hours on his training record. None of the claims have been proven in court. We're going to hear more about it. And an outdoors enthusiast who does a lot of canoeing in Nopaming Provincial Park is bracing for devastating damage there. Riley Martin was forced to flee from that park a month ago. He's not sure the routes he used to canoe even exist anymore and says animals in the area like moose and elk may have been forced to move or may not have survived the wildfires. We'll hear more coming up at 6:30.
Heather, the animals in Lac de Bonnie specifically, I'm on their social pages, so many postings of bears and then also of cubs, and people are wondering if they're like sort of separated from their mothers because of the fire. One that's a little bit too close for comfort on one of the golf courses there and also looks a little bit skinny.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so the animals coming out is a real deal. I know that even when we were up in Lac de Bonnie weeks ago, it was starting already. People were saying, you could see them. They look almost dazed as they walk out of the
and they animals
woods.
Do suffer trauma too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So this is it's going to be an interesting summer with wildlife for sure. All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into the forecast, which has cooperated. As you know, yesterday, Abby, they ended this province-wide state of emergency. Doesn't mean we don't have fires. Doesn't mean we don't need to still take caution. But the state of emergency's calmed down. That's in large part, as we heard from the province, because of the weather.
That's true, and there's still smoke in some areas where those fires are just going off, but you still notice smoke in some areas. Looking across board today, down south, we will be warming up. We will see warm conditions. Even it will be windy at some point. You're going to feel more like a warm air come your way. While the northern part of the province will be seeing cooler temperatures with a mix of sun and clouds. Right now, Winnipeg, 8 degrees, partly cloudy. However, the sun is already crawling through those sunny conditions. We saw fog in some spots in the city and even outside the city limits. That should be clearing as you get into the day, giving us a bright start. We'll see sunshine, but as we get into the afternoon, some clouds will roll in. We'll have a good chance of thunderstorms again in the forecast later today, though the temperature, as I mentioned, will be warming up close to 26 degrees. However, the humidity will make it feel around 28, 29, and still partly cloudy conditions with those thunderstorms rolling into the evening and overnight. Across board, the southern regions, we're seeing temperatures between 4 and 9 degrees right now, while up north, we're seeing 4 to 6 degrees, expecting a mix of sun and clouds as well. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at 8, sunshine on the way.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's get into what's going on the morning commute with Sierra Sanders now. Good morning.
Good morning. The show is just getting started, and so is the morning commute. And if there's anything slowing you down out there, whether you are here in the city or on the highways, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
Well, each and every day, 27 people are diagnosed with a brain tumor in Canada, according to the Brain Tumor Foundation of this country. That's nearly 10,000 people every year. Not to mention the thousands, of course, of family members who are also impacted by a diagnosis. On Saturday in Winnipeg, there's a public walk to recognize those with brain tumors and people who support them. My next guest is helping out with it. Camila Munoz Gomez is the Winnipeg ambassador, in fact, for the Brain Tumor Foundation of Canada. She, as I mentioned, is one of the organizers of the walk, and she's a survivor as well. And she's up early and here via Zoom. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I have to start with your shirt because you're on Zoom and I can't help asking about it. You have all kinds of numbers on it. Tell me the significance. What are you wearing there?
I do. So, sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, it's good. It's early.
So this
year, the slogan is United by Numbers. So basically, it's showing all of the statistics for the Brain Tumor Foundation, really. So the 27 Canadians that are diagnosed every year, 120 different types of brain tumors, just so many throughout.
Yeah,
But,
all over your shirt there. Blue shirt with all the gold and the white writing on it. 120 different types of brain tumors. What happened with yours? What kind was it, and what happened when did you realize that you had one?
So basically, in October of 2022, me and my husband bought our first home. And then I associated my headaches starting after that it was due to stress of buying a new home, dealing with our 3 kids, juggling work, all of that fun stuff. So I didn't really think much of it until maybe in mid-November that I started kind of waking up in the middle of the night from the headaches, and eventually kind of losing a little bit of vision in my left eye. So my husband kind of convinced me, he really convinced me to make an appointment with my doctor. So we did that. And then December 15th, I found out through a CT scan that there was a tumor. So we rushed kind of February 6th of the following year, 2023, I had my surgery. So it was very, very quick. And then we found out it was the grade 2 meningioma for myself. So that is, I believe, the most common type of brain tumor. Because of the different type of grade, I needed to do radiation. So
how are you now?
I'm okay. I'm good. Not any blurred vision. I think I function pretty well. So physically, I look okay. Unfortunately, I have been dealing with some seizures in the last year. So we're still kind of figuring those things out. But that's the thing about brain tumors as well, is like everybody can appear fine, but really sometimes there's a lot going on.
Yeah. When this was happening to you, how old were you, Camilla?
I was 20. I had just turned 27 that year.
Okay. And how old were the kids? I'm just trying to get a sense of how busy your life was when all this was going on for you.
So my youngest was almost 2. She turned 2 the following January. My middle daughter, she was 7. And then my son had just turned 10.
Little kids,
Yeah.
busy life. It's interesting how I appreciate that you shared that you thought it was stress, and because a lot of times we do that with our health, right? And maybe it is stress, but yeah. What have you learned about having a brain tumor that you would like to impart to people, either about how we interact or what more awareness you wish there was around this? You already alluded to sort of, the invisible injury aspect of things that can be very difficult for people. But what would you like people to know about it?
You know what? It's physically, again, you look okay. I look like I'm 100%. But I'm still dealing with memory and trying to focus, and just to give those people who are probably dealing with something, who probably look like me, who look fine, just give them some grace, because you never know, like they're still probably struggling. People who are dealing with it when they're in the middle of all of it, is like the chemo or the radiation or still awaiting surgery. Again, just give them all the support and care that they need.
I understand the community really helped you. So let's talk about Saturday. What's happening, and what's it meant to you to have, that community around?
So Saturday, we're having our brain tumor walk that's located at Kildonan Park in Winnipeg. And estimated about like 300 people right now are going to be attending. So we're hoping that's kind of what we're looking at, if not more. But basically, when the community comes together, like, I love it. It shows the amount of support and, I guess, like, I want to say foundation that everyone would have, whether it's the survivors who maybe don't have a lot of support at home and they see the community that's actually around. It's really nice to see. or people who go in memory of a loved one, and it's keeping their memory alive, right? Or their the way that they were as a person. I've met so many incredible people throughout this community in Winnipeg as well as in Canada, because the Brain Tumor Foundation, actually, there is a young adult group that I'm a part of, and I've met some wonderful people in that. Through online and like in person, I've been lucky enough to meet. So it's wonderful. I'm really, really grateful for them.
I'm really glad to hear that, because years ago I know I was doing stories, and I had a very close friend, just for full disclosure, who was in a terrible car accident in Winnipeg and lived with a brain injury for years. So it wasn't a brain tumor, but brain injury. But he was younger, and part of the challenge and what that led to, and he was a reporter, so together we kind of did some stories. And part of the stories were when you're young and something happens, sometimes finding those supports with other people that might be younger. Maybe they're not there in our healthcare system, right, for rehab or for whatever, post-op. Because you might be put in with elderly people, which there's nothing wrong with that, except for the fact that if you're the only young person, it does change the texture of thing. What's the young support group meant?
They get it, like it's just, they're in the same boat, whether it's the 18-year-old friend that I've made or the 40-year-old friend that I've made. They're all kind of going through similarities, and one day I'll be a little confused, like, oh, have you guys experienced this before? Or, oh, I just can't stop thinking like about why it's difficult for me to focus still. But then it's super encouraging in a way that they share their experiences, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm going through it too. Amazing. So it's like, it sucks to hear it, but I'm glad I'm not the only one, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. And I know the hundreds of people that I hope are going to be, as you said, signed up and walking on Saturday will come together on all kinds of levels and just have a nice day. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for telling us about it. I have braintumor.ca if people want more information. Is that right?
You got it.
Okay, yep. Awesome. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you, Camilla. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's Camilla Munoz Gomez. Winnipeg Brain Tumor Walk happens on 28th of June. That is Saturday, 8:30 in the morning, Kildonan Park. Beautiful place for a walk like that, by the way. For information, and once again, the Brain Tumor Foundation of Canada's website is where you're going. Then you're going to click on the local walk. You're going to check out all the Winnipeg details. It is braintumor.ca.
It's an honor to have you at the White House.
The stories that matter.
The opportunity is in the partnership.
As they happen.
There are some places that are never for sale.
And what they mean to you.
But never say never. Never say never.
For news you can trust, stay with CBC News.
6:24 a.m. Let's return to international news now. Iran hit back against the United States yesterday, striking air bases in Qatar. A retaliation for the American bombing of Iran's nuclear sites over the weekend, but also perhaps a sign Iran is prepared to step back from escalating tensions, and we'll talk about why that in a moment. But President Trump took to Truth Social late in the day, congratulating everyone on a total and complete ceasefire, he said. To walk us through where we're at, Renan Levine is with us, professor of political science at the University of Toronto. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can we start with what I mentioned, that perhaps what Iran did yesterday is a signal that prepared their could suggest they're prepared to step back? Is it because they gave warning to the United States in advance, or is it because of their choice of target?
Yes, is clearly the correct answer. Both of those things are true, right? They chose a target that they knew was heavily defended. They gave advance warning, so that allowed Qatar to close its airspace, U.S. to activate all its air defenses, and move as many personnel as possible out of harm's way. And then, of course, when the the promised missiles came, they were easily intercepted. There was no damage. There was no casualties. All of those things sent a clear signal from Iran. We have to respond, but that's it. Iran knows that however hard they can hit the U.S. can hit back even harder right now. And so they wanted to make sure that they could save face but avoid further escalation. And they did that by giving people advance notice, essentially making sure that if there were any casualties, if there were any damage, they could just blame sort of American incompetence as opposed to their own aggressive actions. So it was a clear signal that this game of tit for tat was going to end after just one round if the United States understood that message and didn't escalate further.
I will ask you about Trump and his what he said on his Truth Social, but I want to ask about our country first. So Mark Carney, among the world leaders, our Prime Minister calling for de-escalation and a return to the negotiating table. What do you make of Canada's position at this stage of the conflict and what Mark Carney has said so far?
Well, I think we have to keep in mind that Canada has very limited influence over what's going on in the Middle East. Iran is one of the few countries Canada does not have direct diplomatic ties with, and whatever happens vis-a-vis Israel, the U.S. is going to be taking the lead. There's not much influence that Canada has directly above, perhaps a tersely worded press release. So there's not a lot, although domestically there have been increasing calls over the last few days that Canada needs to declare the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, that's the offensive branch of the Iranian military, declare that to be a terrorist entity and freeze assets of people that are connected to the Guard Corps. And that would actually allegedly affect dozens, if not several hundred Canadians. And this is part of concerns that if there is an escalating conflict between the U.S. and Iran, Canada needs to make sure that there is not people in Canada that are in position to try to join that conflict.
We also have Russia hosting Iran's foreign minister and calling the U.S. attack unjustified. How significant is that?
No, that's pretty significant, but believe it or not, that's actually already yesterday's news. I mean, there was a clear signal that Russia, which can't do much itself, but a clear signal that Russia is saying, look, not that Iran is justified, but saying that it's time for the U.S. to try to weigh off, try to put pressure on Israel to stop attacking. But that's been superseded by just the events in the last few minutes. Trump departed for the NATO meetings, and before doing so, spoke on the lawn of the White House and put out another Truth Social message on social media, in which he said that he needs Israel to calm down, do not drop those bombs, bring your pilots home now. He used an expletive. Trump seems to really be willing that this ceasefire take effect, but Israel is saying that Iran has broken the ceasefire and that they're ready, willing, and able to retaliate continue this cycle.
Which is why in our last 30 seconds, I left the first question for last, which is what did you make of yesterday's Truth Social post? Because yesterday his post about a complete ceasefire already has changed this morning.
Yeah, I mean, his post last night said that there will be a ceasefire in X number of hours, and whenever that happens, that's always an invitation for both militaries that are involved to say, okay, what goals have we not yet achieved? We have now X number of hours to achieve those goals. And so there's always an intense time right before any ceasefire. This past night was no exception. And now, of course, the big question is what's happening next? And it's now afternoon in the Middle East. And that's a time when this conflict has not been particularly active.
So we'll have to wait for tonight.
We'll be looking to see what happens tonight, and maybe we'll talk tomorrow.
Ronan, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your analysis.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ronan Levine, Professor of Political Science at University of Toronto. World Report with more analysis coming up. And on Newsnet right now, Anita Anand actually is live, Canada's foreign minister. So lots of coverage continuing today. Right now, though, your local news at CBC.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 6:30. It's a cool start to Tuesday. Just 9 degrees out there right now, but we're going to warm up, actually even slightly warmer than normal. A high today of 26, mix of sun and clouds. There is a risk of a late day thunderstorm as well. A Manitoba flight school has been banned from training pilots in the interest of public safety. Transport Canada says LS Airways Flight Academy had its certificate revoked late last year. A former instructor who tipped off officials says in a lawsuit the school failed to follow aviation rules and put students in, quote, significant danger. CBC's Arturo Chang reports.
The whole school stuff, it's like a kind of break everything.
Wayne Liu hoped to settle with his family in Manitoba. The U.S.-trained pilot secured a Canadian instructor license at LS Airways in Gimli, where he also taught. But his license was revoked because it didn't have enough flight hours. Liu says in a lawsuit, LS Airways' owner told him to fake hours on his training record. The lawsuit says the school failed to follow aviation rules and put students in significant danger. Liu and others went to the authorities 2 years ago to complain. In November, Transport Canada barred the school from training more pilots. Other lawsuits filed since then alleged the school took advantage of students' positions, including their immigration status, to exploit them. The owner said the school followed proper procedures. None of the allegations have been proven in court. Arturo Chang, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The NDP government has officially lifted the province-wide wildfire state of emergency. 7 fires are still burning out of control. Premier Wab Kinew says crews are making progress, thanks in part to the weather. Now, the people of Flin Flon are preparing to return home. That city was evacuated May 28th. But with fire crews making progress there, the city has lifted its own evacuation order starting tomorrow. Guy Rideout and his partner have been staying at a hotel in the Paul with their 2 dogs and 1 cat.
We are 100 times more fortunate than Denair Beach. They had terrible, terrible loss of upwards of 200 to 300 structures, which includes lots of homes. We've got away quite scot-free. The outlying areas of a lot of cabin resort homes. Some of them weren't so lucky.
Some people from Creighton, Saskatchewan and Denair Beach were allowed to return over the weekend. A pair of sisters from Pinemutang First Nation are among those who are fighting wildfires this summer. 21-year-old Heather Anderson and her sister Delilah were trained last year in Gypsumville. They were recently fighting fires in eastern Manitoba. Anderson says the days are long and exhausting, but she's happy to help.
Anything that's burning, we put it out. Anything that's like the moss would be burning, so we would have to pour like a bunch of water on that, dig it out, and like flip over logs to make sure it's not burning still.
The sisters are also both young mothers and hope to set an example for their children. They also, they say, want to inspire young girls to set their mind to do anything they want. A tentative new truce between Israel and Iran is faltering this morning. Israel vowed to retaliate after saying Iran launched missiles into its airspace this morning, more than 2 hours after that ceasefire was supposed to take effect. Iranian state media reports Iran's military denied firing on Israel. Explosions boomed and sirens sounded across northern Israel mid-morning. Israel says 4 people were killed. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Winnipeggers may not get a choice about whether they want the city to install new smart water meters in their homes. A new report recommends against giving people the choice to opt out of the program. Some people raise concerns about potential health impacts and security issues related to the new technology, but the city says there are no health risks and the data transmitted by the meters is secure. Water and Waste Chair Ross Eady says there may be other options.
What other cities have done is they can install the antenna just on the outside where it's located, or if an individual wants, the antenna could be set up at the property line. The other cities, they don't do that for free, though.
The new meters will automatically transmit water usage data to the city and can detect leaks immediately. Classic cars are a common sight on Manitoba roads, but finding mechanics to repair them is becoming more of a challenge. Sam Sanders is one of the few working mechanics in the province who knows how to repair classic vehicles. He's worked at a Portage Avenue garage for more than 40 years. He says cars of that era were almost entirely mechanical and operated on carburetors as opposed to the fuel-injected vehicles of today.
A lot of cars like this they're hobbies now. They're not the main group of cars that people drive.
At RRC Polytech in Winnipeg, the chair of automotive trade says the focus is on preparing mechanics for what they'll deal with in the current market. You can read more about this story and other Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather. Well, let's get into what's happening in the weather forecast with Abby Adiemi.
Good morning. It's going to be a cool start to Tuesday. We're going to see warm and windy conditions in the south today. Then we'll see cooler and cloudier situation in the northern part of the province. 8 degrees in Winnipeg right now, expecting a mix of sun and clouds. Some warm breeze will come from the southwest. We'll warm up to 26 today. There's a risk of thunderstorms later. In the Pembina Valley region, we're seeing similar conditions. Temperatures around 6 degrees now. Sunny conditions underway. Also a risk of summer conditions later. High will be close to 26. Brandon is clear and at 4 degrees right now. We have sunny conditions for most of the morning. We'll see some clouds rolling later, warming up to 25. Duffin is at 9 degrees, expecting a mix of sun and clouds. Slight chance of showers in the forecast. Windy from the west, high 20. Gimli and the rest of the Interlake region, we're seeing sunny conditions already at 4 degrees. A mix of sun and clouds later with a risk of thunderstorms in the forecast. It gets windy, but it's going to be warm from the southwest. High of 26. The powerful influence surrounding areas, we have misty conditions there. 6 degrees at this time. Cloudy conditions later. We're going to see showers also roll in, and some storms will come in by the midday period. High around 16. Thompson at 4 degrees and cloudy. We're expecting a mix of sun and clouds. A slight chance of showers. Light southwest wind and high of 17. And in Churchill, it is also mostly cloudy at this time. 6 degrees. Expecting a mix of sun and clouds. Light wind conditions from the west. High 18. So it's warm with storms in the south, and it's cooler and calm up north.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
And now to the morning commute.
Good morning. So far, no calls on the commuter line. Things are moving smoothly out there here in the first hour of the show. If that's not the case, though, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
And today we want your calls about transit, because in the next hour, we actually are going to be talking about transit. Right after 7 o'clock, the manager of service development for Winnipeg Transit will join us. So they're going to be here to be talking about all the changes that start on Sunday, the 29th of June. And if you would like to get some questions in advance of that interview, we'll try to ask some of them on your behalf here. So 788-3205, 788-3205. So that's still ahead. Sierra Sanders, by the way, there with our morning commute update. It is time for our business update with Crystalie Ramlakan on CBC. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So flights are being canceled and delayed, in fact, after strikes in the Middle East. Can you break down what's going on in the industry overall right now?
Yeah, so airlines are scrambling after several Middle Eastern nations have closed their airspace. So the latest that we know is that a tentative truce proposed by U.S. President Donald Trump appears to have faltered as Israel says Iran launched missiles into its airspace less than 3 hours after a ceasefire went into effect, and has vowed to retaliate. But Trump is warning Israel to not carry out any more strikes. And as we know, Israel launched a military attack on Iranian nuclear sites starting back on June 13th. Now, the usually busy airspace stretching from Iran and Iraq to the Mediterranean resembles a ghost town right now. So the tensions are starting to affect airlines beyond the Middle East. So Air India has stopped flights to North America's East Coast and Europe, as those routes use a path that has become increasingly narrow. So with Russian and Ukrainian airspace also closed to most airlines due to years of war, the Middle East has become a more important route for flights between Europe and Asia, but now we're seeing some of those airspaces close, of course. And the conflict has cut off major flight routes to typically resilient aviation hubs such as Dubai, with the world's busiest international airport there.
Let's go to another story as we continue to see the effects of climate change. How are businesses approaching the issue?
Yeah, so work on climate change has largely focused on preventing it from getting worse. But a new report from RBC says businesses are starting to think more about spending on adaptation and preparation as the costs of disasters pile up. So extreme weather and natural disaster costs totaled $368 billion just in the U.S. alone last year. And the trend is expected to get worse, with expectations that temperatures will continue to rise. So the costs stemming from rising temperatures are leading to more attention in boardrooms. Mentions of climate change are on the rise in both the U.S. and Asia, and mentions of physical climate change risk on Canadian earnings calls did see a lumpy climb from late 2020 to a peak mid last year. But the report says mentions have actually fallen sharply in recent months. Now, talk has been highest in industries like utilities, insurance, and industrial services that could be most affected by climate change. And the report says it is still a challenge to find bigger, longer-term adaptation efforts, which can include things like burying power lines and building floodways. But, a study out this year found every dollar invested in adaptation and resilience actually generates more than $10 in benefits over a decade.
And finally, to Hudson Bay, who was back in news and back in court yesterday talking about what's next for their brand, which I believe a lot of the brand rights, or at least the stripes rights, have been sold to Canadian Tire. But what's the latest on all this?
Yeah, and so this is more about the leases. So a judge has granted BC billionaire Ruby Leo permission to take over leases for 3 Hudson's Bay properties and malls that she owns in BC. She's going to pay $6 million for the set of those leases. And Leo wants to use the properties to open a chain of modernized department stores that she's going to name after herself. So she says they're going to sell makeup, jewelry, and apparel, but will also have play spaces for children, dining areas, and entertainment space. And she expects to spend more than $30 million to revamp those spaces. And that's just the beginning. The Bay has reached a deal with her for 25 more leases in Alberta, BC, and Ontario. Now, the Bay has yet to seek court approval for that arrangement, though, and landlords for the spaces are overwhelmingly opposed to her moving in. So court documents filed last week show landlords won't approve her plan. Now, Leo and her staff have launched a petition asking for public support, and they've also published a public letter where she says her quest to own the leases is about reimagining retail and finding a way to give back to a country that gave her a new life.
How are the numbers this morning?
In Europe, stocks are opening higher. Germany is up, the UK is up, France is up. In Asia, markets are on the rise. Japan is up, Shanghai is up, Hong Kong is up. Oil is down $1.97 to $66.54 US per barrel. Gold is down $46.22 to $3,321.75 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.13 of a cent to 72.9 cents US.
All right, Crystal Lee Ramlakan, thank you. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
That's Business News this Tuesday morning live at 6:43 a.m. with Crystal Lee Ramlakan. In Winnipeg right now, 8 degrees. It's partly cloudy. A high today is going to be right around 26 with Humidex 28. Kind of sticky, windy this afternoon, gusty winds. And then we have a risk we'll see a thunderstorm late this afternoon. So we'll see if that develops. Well, let's continue with our coverage of the war and what's going on between all over the Middle East, but between Israel and Iran. We have been connecting with as many Manitobans affected by this as we can. And yesterday, we did that once again. So that was in the backdrop of Iran launching airstrikes, as we've been discussing, against the U.S. military bases in Qatar and Iraq. Those attacks coming after U.S. forces bombing Iranian nuclear facilities over the weekend. Now, there have been some developments this morning, which we've just been talking about, but we actually want to revisit an interview from yesterday, and that is because it's with local Manitoban Yassine Shahidian, who's an Iranian human rights activist based here in Winnipeg. She shared her reaction to the news of the war while speaking to CBC's Faith Fundal on Up to Speed.
It's honestly devastating to see this war going on. us and our family members were terrified for the people that are there back home and what's happening and their safety. We heard just a couple days ago when Tehran got an evacuation order that there was no gas to even leave the city, that the city itself was gridlocked. It's a city of over 20 million people. They were trying to leave towards Shamal or Esfahan to try to have some kind of safety or security, and it was practically impossible. We've had barely any contact with family members over the last couple of days, and hearing about more missiles going through today is very scary to hear about. But at the same time, the Iranian people, both in Iran and in the diaspora outside in Canada or in other countries, for context, there's almost 4 million Iranian refugees in the world right now.
Right.
There's a lot of mixed feelings, a lot of conflicting emotions, because on one side, no one wants to see their homeland bombed. No one wants to see innocent lives lost. But on the other side, there's an oppressive regime, authoritarian dictatorship that's been oppressing an entire country of people.
It's essentially a complicated context, is what you're saying.
Very, very complicated context.
You were with your mom when she got the phone call about the U.S. bombing.
Yes.
What was that like?
Oh, it's terrible. I just saw my mom pick up the phone call from my dad, and I just saw her face drop, the shock on her face. And immediately I was with my grandma, and immediately we just thought the worst, that probably a nuclear bomb was dropped on Iran, because that's what we were hearing about as a possibility. And when I thought of that, I thought, oh my gosh, an entire country devastated, just leveled. Like, how will anyone be able to rebuild? And then my mom said that they hit the nuclear sites, and I honestly felt at least a little sense of relief knowing that it was just nuclear sites, because honestly, no country should have nuclear weapons like that if it's an oppressive dictatorship. But at the same time, there's even more conflicting emotions, because if the leaders of a regime are targeted and they're taken out, yes, that would maybe be a good thing. But at the same time, maybe there are young soldiers who are also losing their lives.
Right.
And young soldiers... Oh, sorry.
And then there would be essentially people in the middle of all of this is what you're worried about as well.
No, exactly. Because if you're targeting a regime, you obviously want to target the Ayatollah, the leaders. Like, those people are terrible people who are oppressing an entire country of people. But the military, the young people, they're conscripted into the military. They're involuntarily drafted and have no choice but to fight for this oppressive regime. And hearing them lose their lives is just, it's unconscionable. Like, how am I supposed to feel like maybe this regime will actually change, but then at the expense of innocent lives? It's just, I don't know what to feel.
Yes, have you heard from your family members? I understand you have family in Iran.
Yes. Just an hour ago, I was with my grandma, and she was able to finally get a FaceTime call from her sisters who had escaped to Shamal outside of Tehran, and after just days of no messages, we were finally able to get just them telling us that they were okay and that they were safe finally. And it was a relief, but I'm just so scared for them and their futures.
What are you hoping people who are listening to us talk right now, what do you hope they'll understand or better appreciate about the whole situation, whether it's specific to the conflict or about Iranian people?
So I think it's really important to understand the context of what's happening. It's super easy to see a post on Instagram and share that and feel like, okay, I know what's happening there. But there's 100 years of history in this conflict. And we can't trust even what activists are saying blindly. We need to make our own effort into research and understanding that, for example, I saw in protests in Toronto and Vancouver and Montreal this past weekend for the Iranian people, I saw people flying the Islamic regime of Iran flag. And that flag is representative of the government of Iran that is currently working to oppress the people. When I saw that flag flying, I realized I think there's a lot of misinformed people who obviously don't want war, and I don't want war either. But when you fly the flag of the regime that's murdering people, executing people, encouraging systematic torture of prisoners, like, for example, Armida Abbasi, who I really encourage anyone listening to go check out. Armida Abbasi is a very prominent activist who's talking about what's really happening on the ground. You really need to know that you might be sharing something that's not aligned with your values.
Right. Do you think people knew that they were flying that flag?
Yes, I do think people knew that, because we know for a fact that there are members of the RGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, in Canada who are attending these protests and encouraging people to fly the Islamic flag. And it's really scary to know that people can easily just be convinced that, oh, this is an Iranian, they're telling me that this is the flag that we need to fly. Please do your research. These Islamic Revolutionary Guard people are trying to garner support for the regime in order to prevent it from being taken down. At this point, I don't know if war can be avoided. I think the time for diplomatic talks was in the Masa Amini protest a few years ago, and the international community failed Iran. At this point, we really need to support the Iranian people the best way that we can. My hope is that people understand what's really going on and understand what do the people of Iran who support the people of Iran in their future really want, and not the Iranian government. See what people really need and don't listen to people who are like maybe behind the curtain supporting the Islamic government. It's important to employ critical thinking skills at this time.
That was Yassi Shahidi, an Iranian human rights activist based here in Winnipeg, in conversation with CBC's Faith Fundal. It is 8 minutes to 7 o'clock now. We have spent a lot of this hour talking about the developments in this story and what's going on this morning. And that is because after Donald Trump, the U.S. president, yesterday took to Truth Social, he congratulated everyone on the ceasefire and then said within 6 hours, congratulations. And now here we are this morning where we know, as we've been telling you, that Donald Trump has irate at Israel and Iran as Netanyahu's government claims a ceasefire was quickly broken. And so all of this is in a different place. Let's get some analysis from Alex Bollingal, who's Deputy Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
So what has Mark Carney's response been to the fact that all of this is sort of still developing and such? Like we talked a little bit about Canada's position already this hour, but in your view, is Canada taking a strong enough position, or how do you see it?
I think he's treading carefully. There's only so much Canada, so much influence Canada has over a situation like this. We might have some sort of like moral clout, but, given how fast things are going, given the fact that it's, one of the principal actors is Donald Trump, and how unpredictable and sort of almost rash and impulsive he can appear to be, Canada's very, very much on the sidelines here. And, I think Carney, is basically, he's said similar things to what other countries have said. We need to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. That would be unacceptable. He's condemned the Iranian, Islamic Republic, as a supporter of terrorism, and those types of things. He was asked yesterday if he thought the American strikes on Saturday were a violation of international law, as I think the Norwegian leader had said he thought it was, or they thought it was, but Carney kind of dodged that. But I think he's treading carefully. At the same time as kind of calling for de-escalation, but not kind of condemning, aside from Iran, like Israel or the United States and what they're doing.
Let's move to talking about security here, because, of course, as people may have heard on World Report this morning, NATO members are meeting today. Prime Minister Mark Carney has signed this comprehensive security and defense partnership with the European Union, with the EU. What more can you tell us about the deal and how it benefits our country?
I think this is there's been a increasing closeness on defense between the EU and Canada over a number of years, and this is being billed as the next kind of leap towards that, or advancement of that. But the bottom line for Canada, I think, right now is that in this push by Canada and the European Union and various other countries to expand their militaries. The EU is doing this thing called Rearm Europe, where they have 150 billion euros of money to go to contracts to support kind of military industries and the production of military gear and munitions and things. And this new deal between Canada and the EU opens the door to Canada potentially participating in that. So talks can start now on Canada potentially getting into Rearm Europe and being able to have Canadian firms bid on contracts that the European Union wants fulfilled to build stuff, or to potentially do joint procurements between the Canadian government and European countries to get better prices on military stuff that we want to acquire. So there's potential kind of material benefits in that cooperation, I think, and that's probably the most significant thing at this point, the potential to have that type of military-industrial relationship with the European Union.
And he'll walk in there, on a high on another topic, I guess, talking about Canada's commitment to defense spending at the 2%, which Trudeau kept, would push off to 2032. So he's positioning himself there. I want to ask you as a last question, though, something that's back here in Canada, Alex, because Bill C-5, this is the One Canadian Economy Act. A lot of listeners are interested in this. It's about spending money here. It did pass in the House of Commons. It's in the Senate. What kind of opposition do you think it's going to face?
It's going to be very interesting. The government seems to think that it'll pass through the Senate, that they seem quite confident that, as the Senate sits this week, that this will go through and become a law. But we'll have to see. There's definitely been opposition off the Hill, obviously, from, Indigenous leaders who, worry about a lack of consultation and whether this new process they're building for major development projects to get them constructed faster will actually respect Indigenous rights. Environmental groups are concerned about, whether the powers that this law would give the government, whether the government will use those powers to go around environmental laws, which they would have the power to do the way the law is written right now, is also a concern for a lot of people. There's even been predictions that there could be protests against the law. And then, in the coming months, they'll start choosing which projects to fast track under this. So I think that moment of choice will be a tension point potentially. But even just passing this law and just getting it through will be something to watch as well. How it plays out in the Senate will be very interesting.
All right, Alex, thank you very much for your time as always.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
That's Alex Bollingal, who's Deputy Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star. 2 local headlines now, live in our news centre, 3 minutes to 7. Here's Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, a pair of sisters from Pinemutang First Nation are among those fighting wildfires in Manitoba this summer. 21-year-old Heather Anderson and her sister Delilah were trained last year in Gypsumville, and recently they were fighting wildfires in eastern Manitoba. We're going to hear from them coming up. And the city of Winnipeg says complaints about abandoned bulky waste dropped by almost half last year. The city doubled the number of hours crews do protective sweeps through targeted areas, making it a year-round program. We're going to hear from one city councillor coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Traffic's quiet, 788-3093 if you need us. Weather is sunny this morning and windy and a possible thunderstorm for Winnipeg this afternoon. Partly cloudy right now and the temperature is 8 degrees. In the next hour, are you worried you're going to miss your bus next Monday? The first full day of the new transit changes. First full weekday. They start on Sunday. Are you worried maybe you're going to walk to the bus stop and see it's no longer there? Your bus stop is moved? Coming up, the city is going to tell us how to prepare for the incoming transit overhaul and just to remind us what is changing out there as we go through this transition. Also, in the next hour of the show, we're going to check in with a 17-year-old playwright as they prepare to premiere their first ever play at the Winnipeg Fringe Festival, and they're doing it with their dad, the two of them on stage. So we'll find out more about that. And Heather was mentioning city councillors. We have one on in the next hour as well, but this one is going to talk about cutting the grass. The chair of Public Works responds to an East Elmwood man's concerns. That man was here in studio yesterday. He has concerns because a city employee went into his backyard to cut his grass. There'd been a complaint about the front yard. He also has concerns because he cut the front yard and says he was still fine and he didn't understand the order of events. And he's stuck now on the hook with a fine for the initial not cutting of the grass, and then he's also stuck with a fine if he wants to appeal it. Actually, a cost to appeal it. So we're going to talk to Councillor Janice Lukes all about it. Stay tuned. It's coming up. World Report's next.
Today on The Current.
Security is why Mark Carney is in Europe. He's expected to sign a new agreement with the EU.
I'm Susan Ormiston. Mark Carney is in Europe today meeting with NATO allies, and the agenda is vast. From the wars in Iran and Ukraine to calls for more military spending to Donald Trump. A lot is on the line. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young.
Donald Trump's ceasefire between Iran and Israel is faltering.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
An angry U.S. president reacts to the news this morning as he speaks with reporters. Israel is accusing Iran of violating the truce by firing rockets after the ceasefire took effect, though Trump says both sides are to blame. Earlier, word of the ceasefire had brought hope to this resident of Tel Aviv.
I'm so tired. Everyone is tired. We just want to have some peace of mind. That's what I can say. Hopefully, for us, for the Iranian people, for the Palestinians, for everyone in the region.
CBC senior international correspondent Margaret Evans brings us the latest from Jerusalem.
The ceasefire, announced on social media overnight by U.S. President Donald Trump, came with few details, and according to the Israeli military, has already been violated by Iran. Both Iranian state television and the Israel Defense Forces confirmed acceptance of the agreement. But air raid sirens sounded in northern Israel hours after the start of the Iran ceasefire deadline, with the Israeli Defense Forces reporting they'd intercepted a single missile. Israel's defense minister says he's ordered the military to respond. The hours before the ceasefire was due to take effect, Iran launched a barrage of missiles at Israel, with one hitting a residential building in the southern city of Beersheba, killing 4 people. Israeli strikes overnight, meanwhile, are reported to have killed 9 Iranians, including another nuclear scientist. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Russia is accusing NATO of expanding beyond its traditional area of responsibility. That is Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. He says there are risks posed by NATO attempting to establish its presence in the Middle East. And he accused the military alliance of trying to get a foothold in parts of Asia and the Arctic. Lavrov's comments come as NATO leaders are gathering for their annual summit. It is the first such meeting for Prime Minister Mark Carney and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. Rutte is hosting the summit in his home country, the Netherlands. The CBC's Murray Brewster is there.
Originally, it was expected to be a broad, bold agenda focusing on Russia. This year's NATO summit, however, has been narrowed in scope to perhaps a single catchphrase: show me the money.
I'm not comfortable at all with the 5% figure.
Bart de Wever is the Prime Minister of Belgium, who remains a little gobsmacked at what allies are being asked to invest.
We've jumped to 2%. We're more or less in the same situation as Canada.
Canada arrives at the summit fresh off Prime Minister Mark Carney's pledge to increase defense spending by $9.3 billion this year in order to meet the existing 2% target. Member nations have agreed to increase the target to a combined 5% of GDP, 3.5% for direct military funding, and an additional 1.5% for defense infrastructure. They'll meet that pledge by 2035. Veteran Canadian diplomat, now Senator Peter Beam, says avoiding the target will be hard in the current climate with the Trump administration.
There may not be much of a choice.
In a change from past years, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will be invited to only attend this year's leaders' dinner and not the meeting of allies. Despite the downgrading, NATO insists Ukraine remains a top priority. Murray Brewster, CBC News, The Hague.
The effects of a catastrophic failure at the Eagle gold mine in Yukon are still being felt downstream. It's been 1 year since part of the site collapsed. Cyanide spilled into waterways surrounding the mine. It caused environmental contamination and a downturn in Yukon's economy. Ashel Kawaja reports people in the nearby village of Mayo are still grieving and angry.
And these are the wild roses here. They just came out. Everything's kind of late this year.
Gathering traditional medicine near her village of Mayo, Yukon, Crystal Prophet says it's all still very raw for her.
We used to go up that way and call moose our hunting grounds. And with that whole spill, I mean, you know, it went into the underground water, right?
The Eagle Gold Mine was the largest operating mine in the Yukon. It produced gold by dousing a heap of crushed ore with cyanide solution. But the heap collapsed in a massive slide, cyanide flowing. It was close to shift change, and no workers died, but hundreds of jobs were lost. For many citizens of the Notchonaik Dun First Nation, it's the environmental destruction that hurts most.
Pissed me off because of their neglect. all the devastation.
It's a catastrophe.
John Stryker is the Yukon Minister of Mines. There is now water treatment happening, but he says it will be a long time before all the cyanide is gone. Stryker says new water storage helped prep for the spring freshet, the recent snowmelt. He says there were concerns for a second slide with the melt.
Now we've just made it through freshet. We did manage to not overwhelm the system. I always say knock on wood.
An independent review is expected in the coming weeks. But for many, like Prophet in Mayo, the what and why of the mine failure is of little consequence.
A lot of people are grieving, and for people to even want to talk to you about it right now is so fresh, you know.
Cheryl Kawaja, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Ontario and Quebec can expect no relief from the heat today. Environment Canada says today's temperatures will rival yesterday's. With the humidity, it could feel more like 40 degrees or higher. Many cities in Ontario and Quebec are still under a heat warning. Forecasters say this level of heat so early in the season is dangerous. Many people are not used to the high temperatures and humidex, which are well above normal. Voters in 3 Alberta by-elections are keeping with the status quo. Separatist candidates failed to win seats in the provincial legislature. But Naheed Nenshi won a seat nearly a year after he became the new leader of the Alberta NDP. Karina Zapata has the details.
The MLA for Edmonton Strathcona, our leader, Naheed Nenshi.
It didn't take long after polls closed for that results to come in. A vacant seat in Edmonton Strathcona will soon be Naheed Nenshi's. The leader of the Alberta NDP says he already has a goal in mind: to become the province's next premier.
It was a 3-step process: win the leadership, get a seat in the House, and now we win the general election.
In the southern suburbs of Edmonton, Gurtej Singh Brar won the by-election in Edmonton-Ellerslie, leaving Alberta's capital city as an NDP fortress. But in central Alberta, the United Conservative Party will keep its seat in the mostly rural riding of Old Didsbury Three Hills, where farmer and political newcomer Tara Sawyer has won.
I think it sends a clear message to the federal government. Alberta's had enough, and it's time they take us seriously and they start listening to us.
While candidates backing separation were on the ballots, none were successful in their attempts to win. Still, Cam Davies, leader of the Republican Party of Alberta, says he won't give up.
This is just the beginning. We're not going away. We've got a lot of work to do. We're rolling up our sleeves, and the work starts now.
Davies says he's working for a growing number of Conservatives in Alberta who are frustrated with the status quo. Karina Zapata, CBC News, Calgary.
Canadian economists are watching for the latest inflation numbers later this hour. Many predict there will be no spike in inflation, but as Anis Hadari explains, that does not necessarily mean the cost of loans and mortgages will drop.
The prices Canadians pay may not have gone up that quickly last month. That's the prediction of many economists, who expect May's inflation rate, the consumer price index, will be relatively stable. However, stable inflation doesn't necessarily mean interest rates drop.
The devil is in the detail with CPI.
Charles St. Arnaud is the chief economist with credit union group Alberta Central. He says what he's really looking for in these numbers is where core inflation goes. That strips out more volatile measures like energy or food. It's also what the Bank of Canada watches. And the bank decides interest rates.
The Bank of Canada has been very clear in their recent communication is that their focus is entirely on current inflation. That unless we're starting to see inflation returning, especially those core measures, returning to within the target band, they won't feel comfortable to lower interest rates.
That's why it's important to understand the forces at work on inflation, which ones are temporary and which ones are likely to last.
Speaking last week in St. John's, Newfoundland, Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem didn't give many hints on what's next.
That's easier said than done. And right now, it's complicated.
And more data could be more complicated still. There's another batch of inflation numbers before the next decision on interest rates at the end of July. Anis Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning. morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. Tuesday morning, sunshine to start. Maybe not to finish, though. Abby's in to update that in a moment, talking about Winnipeg's forecast. Well, this hour, sisters are doing it for themselves and for you, too. We're going to hear about a pair of sisters from Penamutang First Nation. They've been fighting the wildfires together. They want to be good role models to their kids, in part, and we'll hear more of their story. That's coming up this hour on Information Radio. Also, are you worried you're going to miss your bus next Monday? That's because Sunday, big changes to transit coming, or maybe that you're going to walk to the bus stop and you're going to see it's no longer there. The city is going to speak with us about how to prepare for the big transit overhaul. And you've actually sent me some questions this morning, so I'll get some of those into our interview as well. And we'll meet a 17-year-old playwright and their father as they prepare to premiere their first ever play at the Winnipeg Fringe Festival, which is coming up. Right now, 11 minutes after 7, and Heather Wells is in with news headlines.
Good morning. Well, a Gimli flight school has been banned from training more pilots. Transport Canada says it revoked LS Airways Flight Academy's certification in the interest of public safety. Wayne Liu says he was among students who blew the whistle on the school. He says in a lawsuit, its owner told him to fake flight hours on his training record. None of the claims have been tested in court. Some people are preparing to return to Flin Flon. About 5,100 had to flee the city almost a month ago with a massive wildfire burning nearby. That fire is more than 370,000 hectares in size, still out of control. But the city is lifting the mandatory evacuation order tomorrow as fire crews make progress. We're going to hear from one man who is getting set to go home. I'll be back with more Manitoba News at 7:30.
Let's get into the forecast, Abby.
Yeah, we're looking at the south warming up nicely. Today we'll get some winds, however, that will be coming warm. In the northern part of the province, it's still going to stay cooler with more clouds. Right now, Winnipeg, we are now at 10 degrees. We will start the day with some sunshine, but by the afternoon period, it's going to be turning into a mix of sun and clouds. There's a good chance of thunderstorms later today, so you might want to prepare for that. And it gets breezy in the afternoon. Quite warm, though. We'll warm up to 26. However, the humidity is going to make it feel like a 26. Brandon, Dauphin, Gimli, we're seeing temperatures between 7 and 10 degrees. Those fog patches we saw at the outer layers of the city already clearing at this time, but it's going to leave behind sunny conditions. And up north, we're still seeing cool temperatures between 5 and 10. But right now, Winnipeg, 10 degrees, a warm day ahead with sunshine turning into partly cloudy skies later.
And that you're right about those cooler temperatures up north. 5 is the cold spot in the province in Thompson right now. Thank you, Abby. Abby Adiyemi. C.R. Sanders is in now with our commute. Good morning.
Good morning. No calls on the commuter line this morning. I'm not seeing anything else out there. So things are moving smoothly out there. If that's not the case, though, whether you are here in Winnipeg or you're out on the highways, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
All right, you want a lot of feedback? Talk about cutting grass and talk about your bus routes, right? Well, we have both this hour on the show. Let's start with the buses. Winnipeg Transit is making huge changes, like generational changes here, people. Starting on Sunday, a lot of the primary transit lines will be different, which means some of the routes are not going to exist come Monday morning. And if you're worried you're going to miss your bus, as I mentioned, or maybe you're worried your bus stop will be gone, our next guest is going to help us navigate all of this. Bjorn Radstrom is the manager of service development with Transit, and we've reached him to get some ideas on how to successfully navigate what is coming, the city's new bus network, which is, the biggest changes I mentioned in a generation. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
You ready?
We are ready.
Yeah. So the question number one actually comes from me. It also comes from Mary Swain, who's a listener. Just to remind Winnipeggers, why the need to change the routes?
Yeah. We really have a transit system right now that was designed for the city of the 50s and the 60s, where we were trying to get everybody into downtown in the morning and out of downtown in the afternoon. But when we did public engagement for the master plan starting back in about 2018, we heard very clearly from people that they needed more out of their transit system, and people wanted to essentially go from everywhere to everywhere and not just have what we call a radial system focused on getting people into the downtown. And when we looked at it, really the only way to do that was to redraw the entire map kind of go back to basics, looking at the geography and the geometry of the city, and make the primary network follow the major streets and then have the feeder routes connect into those primary lines.
So there's new routes in the northwest, the northeast, and the southeast quadrants of the city. And you've already started with the new system kind of as a pilot in the southwest part of the city, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
When we launched in 2020, stage 2 of the rapid transit corridor opened, we also redesigned the entire route network down there. And we redesigned it as a spine and feeder system. And if you want to think of it as, phase 0 of the master plan, that would not be inaccurate. And it's actually been really successful. It's helped us to move a lot of people really efficiently through the southwest of the city, getting them to other neighborhoods and also traveling within their neighborhoods.
So I want to read some of the comments because some of them speak to the worries and concerns. And obviously, this is going to be a huge learning curve for people. Audrey Logan wrote in, since a lot are saying it will take longer to get to the destination, will transfers be extended to help from that? To help with that? If you need a transfer, will that be extended?
We're not extending the transfers just yet, but that is part of our plan as we're going to revamp our fare collection system. If you look at a report that went to council earlier this year, we do talk about that, the need to extend transfers, because right now our transfer time is on the shorter side compared to other Canadian cities. Okay, so you're going to leave it in place for now and see if it's needed? Yeah. Okay. I'm wondering what you're hearing about the main concerns and worries from transit users so far. A lot of people are worried about just figuring it out. And so that's one of the reasons why we have a whole bunch of different tools that people can use. It's essentially a few different trip planners. So there's our Navigo trip planner that we've had for a long time. People can use that now, and they've actually been able to use that for over a month. You use this little switch where you can turn on a preview of the primary transit network, and you can plan your trip as though it was already in place and just see what it would be like. But also, every transit trip planner that's out there does things a little bit differently. So we've also partnered with a company called the Transit app, and they have a network preview mode as well. So you can check that and see what it gives you. And then there's also Google Maps that has transit instructions as well. So we're encouraging people to try them all. And like I said, because every trip planner does things a little bit differently, see what they all give you. Each one of them has settings that sometimes can be a little bit difficult to find about how long you're willing to walk, how quickly you walk, how comfortable you are waiting for a really short transfer, or do you want a long transfer? Play around with those to really see what's available to you. This is one of the biggest challenges is that I hear from people sometimes that they want to know which one's going to give them the best result. But really, there is no single best result because things that are important to me might not be as important to the next rider because I might want to walk a further distance, but other people might value a shorter walk and a transfer to make things easier. So that's why we've got all these different tools that people can try out.
Where are they going to find those tools? Are they linked to the website in an efficient way, or is it up to the user to figure it out?
If you go to winnipeg.ca/primary transit network, there's a little bit of an explanation on there about our trip planners, including, and Navigo is the one that's just on our website. The trip planner you use now is the same one that you'd keep using. We also have our own app that people can download. And then the other one, the Transit app, that one is basically purely an app, and you can get that from the app stores on whichever device you're using. And then Google Maps is, of course, just go to Google Maps.
Yep. Now, I understand you are planning to have travel trainers at bus stops, like teams out there to help people navigate the new network at every bus stop or at selected ones, or how's that going to work?
It'll be at major transit points throughout the city. We've had these travel trainers working for the last couple of months, actually, going and teaching people what the new network is going to be like and how to use it. But they've been focused on going out to community groups. Anybody who's an organized group who wants to invite us, and a lot of it in the case it's seniors groups or different cultural groups, and then the travel trainers will go down there and do a presentation to them and teach them. Now, as we're in the week before launch, we've shifted, so the travel trainers will be out this week going to all these major places, so all throughout the downtown, malls throughout the city and places like that, helping to get people prepared. And then next week, they'll all be out again, plus a lot of the office staff from Winnipeg Transit, including myself and the whole team of 15 that I lead in service development. We'll all be out there wearing blue vests and white hats, just helping people find their way, because we know there's going to be a big learning curve, and it's going to be a challenge for people to figure out, especially in the first weeks, exactly how to navigate the new system.
I want to ask you about the aspect of, there's gains to this. I know the city is saying, you're saying there's going to be gains to this, but there will also be changes in terms of some distances. So Bruno Clausen said, my worst trip will be the next one to the concert hall. Until now, we got picked up 3 minutes from our home to right in front of the concert hall. Now we get picked up 5 minutes from our home, and he writes, no problem. But then he says the closest we can get to the concert hall is Portage and Fort. So now we're walking an 11-minute walk. And he says we might actually start taking the car. Is the reality of this system that people should be prepared for either a longer walk to get to the stop or a longer walk off the back, because you're not feeding into one area of the downtown. You're connecting, as you said, around the city.
Yeah, in some cases that'll be true, but also if somebody's arriving at Portage and Fort, I don't know which route they're arriving on. Presumably it's maybe the blue line on Portage Avenue that's getting them there, or one of the other routes that crosses through there. But the advantage of the frequent service model, which this is based on, is that when you're on one of these main corridors, the service generally comes so frequently that you don't have to consult a schedule. So in that case, if you're at Portage and Fort, walk over to Main Street and catch a northbound FX2 bus, and that'll take you up to the concert hall. So that's the idea, is because it's so frequent. So any of there's the blue line, obviously, our one rapid transit line. The FX lines, FX2, 3, and 4, those are the frequent express. And then the F lines, those are the frequent ones. It's especially those where you'll be able to just show up and catch a bus without really having to think of the schedule. And there's a lot of freedom to that when you don't have to be there at exactly 3:06 or something like that to catch that bus. Because even if you miss that one, the next one's coming along only a handful of minutes later.
Carrie-Ann Penner is asking, how long will you keep the old signage up so people can get used to navigating the new system? Like, is everything down on Sunday and swapped, or what?
Most of the signs have been replaced already. So any of the stops that will still be in effect under the new network, those signs have been swapped out. There may be a couple of lingering ones that got missed, but those have all been replaced. And so there's a sign down below, a temporary one that says these existing routes will be in place until end of service on June 28th, and the ones that are up on the permanent sign will be in effect starting Sunday, June 29th. For any stops that are no longer part of the new network, those signs might take us a couple of months to get around to removing all of those.
Okay. Tia Mallory, and I've had a lot of people writing in about this, saying there does seem to be more walking required. What about people with disabilities or with little kids, especially in the winter? And I know that this has been suggested this will make transit more accessible for new users. But have you been hearing concerns about that these, people that don't have, that have mobility challenges are maybe going to, how much will they have to be really thinking about the fact that this will require some longer distances?
Yeah, we have heard about that, but we also want to just encourage people to give it a shot, because sometimes when they see things on a map, the distance seems a little bit daunting, but when they actually get out and walk it, it actually seems perfectly fine. A lot of us have trouble translating what we see on a map into what it's going to be like as the actual experience. So we're encouraging people to give it a shot, get out there and try it. And by having the stops spaced slightly farther apart, one of the main goals is to keep things moving more quickly and to be more efficient. It's one of the challenges we have right now is with the lack of frequency, the confusing and convoluted network, and sometimes very full buses, is that, yes, you can get to a stop easily, but then you can't get on the bus because it's full or it's really late or something like that. But with a simplified network and a frequent service model, if you miss that one bus that you were going to catch, like I said before, the next one's coming along only a handful of minutes later. And because we basically eliminated branches, there's no longer the 11 Glenway, the 11 Donwood, the 11 Rothesay. You just get on that one bus. So if you were waiting for an 11 Rothesay, and that's only every fourth bus that comes along, you don't have to wait another 30 minutes for the next Rothesay one to come because the first one was full. You just hop on the next, I think it's F8, on Henderson Highway, and away you go. So there's a lot changing.
And what's the difference in frequency? Because we say more frequency, but I'm just trying to give people a sense. If I've been standing there before and it'd be like, oh my gosh, the next one's not for half an hour. Are buses coming every 4 minutes, every 10 minutes, or is it route dependent?
It's route dependent, but it depends on the type of route. That's why we've got these different ones: the rapid, the FX routes, the F routes, and the direct routes. Those ones are the most frequent, especially at peak times. They'll definitely be coming better than every 10 minutes.
Okay.
But it's also, again, because there's no branches, you don't have to wait for your specific one, like the 11 Rothesay or the 11 Donwood.
Yep.
You just catch whichever bus is going down Henderson. So even if there were fewer buses on Henderson, there's more available to you.
You're giving me flashbacks of transfers from when I grew up in NK. So like so many transfers. I know all those buses, right? All those transfers to get across to U of M and to
That's where I grew up
Red
as well.
River. Yeah. Okay. So as a last question here, and I know there's lots to walk through and we'll be talking over the next couple of weeks. This is a big transition for us. Neil Colligan wants to know what goes on with the old signs on discontinued routes and can he get one as a keepsake?
We've had that question a lot, and we're actually trying to figure out how we could maybe do something like that. There's so many signs that there's no way that we can take individual requests for specific signs. That would just be a huge program to administer. But yes, there's a lot of signs coming down, and we're trying to figure out if there's a way that we can make those available to the public. So we'll let people know as soon as we got that figured out.
Yeah, we got to get one from our CBC studio here, maybe. All right, Bjorn, thank you very much. Appreciate your time this morning, and thank you for taking the questions.
Thank you very much.
That's Bjorn Radstrom, the manager of service development with Winnipeg Transit. So I know there's more questions to come and we'll have more answers to come as we all walk through this. The big transit changes start on Sunday. It is time to turn our attention to morning sports on CBC 89.3 FM. And Scott Reguer is here to tell us what's going on. Hello.
Hey there, Marcy.
Big match for Canada's men's soccer team tonight.
For sure. A spot in the Gold Cup quarterfinals on the line as Canada takes on El Salvador. Canada, Marcy, needs just a draw to go through, although against an opponent FIFA ranks 51 spots behind them. The expectation is to win for sure. Head coach Jesse Marsh will be back on the sideline after serving a 2-game suspension for verbally abusing officials. Asked about his opponent this evening, Marsh reached into his well-traveled past.
In Germany, the word is Selbstverständlichkeit, and it means understanding oneself really well. That, I think, wraps up into an identity of what you're trying to create in football, is you want to create a team where everything that they do is second nature. And that's what I feel like El Salvador has. I think that's really important for us to now put a really good performance together against a team that's going to fight for everything.
So Canada needs more Selbstverständlichkeit tonight, I guess.
Well done.
And my German-speaking dad would probably have a word with me about my pronunciation, but there you are. They could also use a quality midfielder, Marcy. Both Ali Ahmed and Jonathan Osorio have suffered injuries. They've returned to their clubs. So enter, potentially at least, Stefan Estacio. His team, Porto, was eliminated from the Club World Cup last night, and that match, well, it took place in New Jersey, so probably unreasonable to expect Estacio to play this evening, a 3-hour flight away in Houston. But should Canada win or draw against the Salvadorans, Estacio would be a welcome addition for the quarterfinals. Kickoff is at 9 Central Time tonight.
Now, you just said Club World Cup. That tournament's come under fire, I understand, for the quality of its playing surfaces?
Yeah, things are not looking good there. For context, the Club World Cup, Marcy, is a month-long event going on around the U.S. right now, featuring many of the planet's best teams. After his side's win against the Sounders in Seattle yesterday, Paris Saint-Germain coach Luis Enrique was highly critical of the pitch.
It used to be artificial turf, and now it is natural grass, and they have to water it by hand. They did so at halftime, but the field was dry again in 10 minutes. The ball bounces almost like if it were jumping around like a rabbit. For our game, this is a problem. I think that this is something that FIFA does need to bear in mind if we want this to be the most high-level competition in the world. I wouldn't imagine an NBA court full of holes.
Yikes. Keep in mind, this Club World Cup, Marcy, is very much an addition for next summer's FIFA World Cup, which of course involves countries as opposed to professional footy sides. FIFA requires World Cup stadiums to have natural grass, and only around half of them do right now. So scientists are busy working out how to find the best possible natural turf to replace, cover, or infuse with the artificial surfaces that exist in the other half of those stadiums. But as dress rehearsals go, hearing one of the world's top coaches comparing fields in North America to NBA courts with holes in them, not ideal.
No. And you think they would have been on that maybe? I don't know. Put all that work into your bid and then you don't think about the surface?
Yeah, it's a big problem in Toronto, for one. So we'll hear more about that going forward.
Okay, before you go this morning, let's finish because it's with hockey. It's a big day in women's hockey.
It is. The PWHL draft goes tonight, just 2 weeks after an expansion draft that reshaped the league. Teams will have a chance to restock talent this evening. Now, unlike the league's first two drafts, Marcy, which saw phenoms Taylor Heisey and Sarah Fillier selected first overall by Minnesota and New York, respectively, tonight's top pick is far from clear-cut. So we'll see how it goes. Starts at 6 o'clock Central Time. A couple of names to look out for. Defenders with U of M Bisons, Camille and Cameron Gillis. Will they get selected? We'll see tonight.
All right. Thanks a lot, Scott.
You bet.
With CBC Sports here on Information Radio, that's Scott Regehr. Call us if you have a problem on your morning drive. By the way, pretty quiet so far, which is good news. 788-3093. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is 10 degrees, nice, bright sunshine. We're going to see some clouds roll in this afternoon, bringing with them a risk of a thunderstorm late today and a high of 26. A Manitoba flight school has been banned from training pilots in the interest of public safety. Transport Canada says LS Airways Flight Academy had its certificate revoked late last year. A former instructor who tipped off officials says in a lawsuit the school failed to follow aviation rules and put students in significant danger. CBC's Arturo Chang reports.
The whole school stuff, it's like a kind of break everything.
Wayne Liu hoped to settle with his family in Manitoba. The U.S.-trained pilot secured a Canadian instructor license at LS Airways in Gimli, where he also taught. But his license was revoked because it didn't have enough flight hours. Liu says in a lawsuit, LS Airways' owner told him to fake hours on his training record. The lawsuit says the school failed to follow aviation rules and put students in significant danger. Liu and others went to the authorities 2 years ago to complain. In November, Transport Canada barred the school from training more pilots. Other lawsuits filed since then allege the school took advantage of students' positions, including their immigration status, to exploit them. The owner said the school followed proper procedures. None of the allegations have been proven in court. Arturo Chang, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The NDP government has officially lifted the province-wide wildfire state of emergency. While 7 fires are still burning out of control, Premier Rob Canoe says crews are making progress thanks in part to the weather. Some people are preparing to return to Flin Flon. About 5,100 had to flee that city almost a month ago as a massive wildfire burned nearby. That fire still remains out of control. The evacuation order for Flin Flon is lifted as of tomorrow. Guy Rideout and his partner have been staying at a hotel in the Paul with their 2 dogs and 1 cat.
It was a relief to have a goal line, something that we know we can return. In there, of course, there's lots of emotions and stuff between the 2 communities, Creighton, Saskatchewan, and Flin Flon. So once we filtered through that, it's at least we know we can go home.
Some people who live in Creighton and Denair Beach were allowed to return over the weekend. Rideout has heard about terrible losses there, especially for Denair Beach. 2 sisters from Pinemutang First Nation hope to inspire other women through firefighting. 22-year-old Delilah Anderson and her sister Heather are 2 of the hundreds of firefighters battling wildfires in the province this year. Anderson says seeing the destruction to some of the bush makes her emotional at times.
When you step foot in there, everything's just burnt. I have thoughts like, are these trees going to be alive still, or are they dead? Because some trees, you could tell they are really burnt and they're gone.
The sisters plan to head back out with their crew in early July. They say even though the days are long and physically challenging, it is worth it to know they are helping others. The ceasefire agreement announced between Israel and Iran appears to be in jeopardy, and U.S. President Donald Trump is not happy about it.
We basically have 2 countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Trump speaking to reporters this morning in Washington. His comments come after the Israeli military says Iran violated the ceasefire by firing a missile into northern Israel. Israel's defense minister says he has ordered the military to respond, quote, with full force on targets in the heart of Tehran. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. The city of Winnipeg says complaints about abandoned bulky waste dropped by almost half last year. The city doubled the number of hours crews do protective sweeps through targeted areas, making it a year-round program. Water and Waste Chair Ross Eady says city crews know where the problems are.
Nobody has to call in those back lanes because they know where it always shows up. Yeah, it's actually a good news story, right? I'm happier about that, but I have to tell you, I'm sick and tired of all the garbage. People got to stop throwing it around, man.
The city says it centralized the process for all bulky waste complaints, directing them to the Water and Waste Department. And classic cars are a staple of cruise nights and car shows in Manitoba. But finding mechanics to repair those vehicles is becoming more of a challenge. The number of people trained to repair older vehicles has dwindled over the years. Jim Voth is the chair of automotive trades at RRC Polytech in Winnipeg. He says they don't teach students how to repair carburetors or fix old cars.
If somebody wants to learn that, they can still learn that, but they're going to have to find themselves a mentor. Somebody probably with silver hair that's done it a few times and can walk them through it.
Voss says RRC's focus is on preparing mechanics for what they'll deal with in the current market. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I can't do any of that. Do you have any of those skills, Heather? Could you?
Oh my goodness, no.
No, I don't either. I wish I did though. Back in the day, I took power mechanics in school and learned how to, build the engine and all that, but nothing stuck up here.
I once in my life changed a tire once.
Did you? I know, right? These are skills we should all have, I guess, right? But so changing those industries, it's fascinating.
Well, and cars are so computerized as well, right?
Yeah, completely different ballgame now. All right. Thank you, Heather. Speaking of all things moving, I just want to mention that we just had an interview answering questions about the big transit changes starting on Sunday. And we got some of your questions in. If you have more, please call us at 204-788-3205. And we'll continue to collect those and try to get answers for people as we march toward this big change. Let's get into what's happening in the weather forecast. Abby Adeyemi is here to look at all the regions.
We are warming up already in the southern part of the province. We're seeing temperatures climb close to 10 degrees in most of the regions down south. Winnipeg at 8 degrees, sunny start already. Then we'll see a partly cloudy condition with a chance of thunderstorms later. Winds will be light from the southwest, and tonight we'll see partly cloudy conditions. In the Pembina Valley region, similar conditions with 10 degrees at this point. Some fog patches are spotted earlier, but that should clear, and then would warm up to around 26 degrees. Brandon at 7, mostly sunny at this time. It will be transitioning to a mix of sun and clouds later. Slight chance of showers also in the forecast. Winds coming from the southwest, high 25. Dauphin is at 9 degrees right now, seeing a mix of sun and clouds. Today we do have that slim chance of showers in the forecast with winds coming from the west, high 20. Gimli's at 7, also sunny at this time, warming up to 26. Dapa, 9 degrees, warming up close to 16 degrees. Thompson is at 5, seeing a mix of sun and clouds at this time. There's a slight chance of showers in the forecast for Thompson, warming close to 17. And Churchill is at 10 degrees right now, mostly cloudy also, expecting a mix of sun and clouds today, high of 18 degrees. Winnipeg, we are still warming up close to 26 today.
All right, it's going to be sticky. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Sierra Sanders is just getting into the studio to tell us about the morning commute. Is it still quiet?
It is still quiet on the commuter line this morning, so things are moving along out there. But again, if that's not the case, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Sierra.
Thank you.
7:38 Tuesday morning, and next on the show, a Winnipeg teenager is about to premiere their first play at the Winnipeg Fringe Festival. And it's a family affair because 17-year-old Adia Branconnier is the playwright behind I Hope You Know. It's a semi-autobiographical play. It's going to be performed to the very people that it's written about, and by the very people, rather. Adia is with their father in studio this morning, Mike Branconnier. They both star in the show together. They're both here, as I mentioned, to tell us more about it. Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning. Okay, so was this your idea, Adia, or did you get pulled on stage by your dad?
No, this I wrote this before last summer as a way of just like processing some stuff from like growing up, and he just kind of got roped into it as my co-star.
How are you feeling about it, Mike?
It's like an honor and also probably the most nerve-wracking thing I've done as a parent so far.
Yeah, I bet you're proud though too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Beyond words.
Can you tell us more about where the idea for the show came from and sort of the story it tells without giving too much away?
Yeah, ever since I was a kid, me and my dad have always had these like super deep conversations. We've always been really close, and we've always been able to talk about these big things. So I thought this story could kind of follow a teenager and their parent or a young adult, and just the conversations they go through trying to reconnect. So the story follows Nico and their dad, Dave, and they've been estranged for a long time, and they meet for the first time again on a train, and they're kind of going through all these conversations, trying to find this common connection and rekindle their relationship.
What do you hope that audiences might learn or might see in the work?
Yeah, I think everyone can kind of relate to this feeling of wanting to be understood, right? So this show, I just hope the audience takes away that connection isn't lost, even when a relationship is tough. You can always find it again. It just takes hard work, and you don't need to fully understand someone to be able to support them.
How does that resonate with you, Mike, that you don't need to fully understand someone to support them? And also, how do you feel about bringing some of these conversations that can be challenging, any parent-teenager conversation can be, to the stage like this?
I'm really honored to get to kind of voice, at least in this project, the typical Gen X parent, that wants to be there for their kid but might not understand this world because it's so different than school in the late 80s, early 90s, which is where I come from. These conversations I'm learning so much from Adia about the world. Like as much as I've taught her, I'm now learning. They're taking the lead and showing me what's up with Generation Z.
What's it like for you to in your life and then through the work in this play? What's that process like, going from teaching to learning, and also maybe having to have moments of humility where you go, okay, hang on.
That's the key word. Humble. Yeah, it's humbled me.
I'm Gen X too, so you tell me what you're thinking.
You've got to put because Gen X, I feel like most of Gen X kids were raised with some level of trauma and some level of self-sufficiency, and we've just sort of got to put ego and all those survival mechanisms aside and really open ourselves up to learning and this new level of like kindness that today's generation look for, and labels. I come from a don't label me childhood, and 80s generation look for labels. They want to be compartmentalized so that they have that community. And a punk rock guy from the 80s and 90s, it was something to get used to.
Yeah, identity means a whole other thing. There's so much learning and beauty in that.
Absolutely,
right?
And beauty is
what were the conversations like with your dad along the way that you're hoping to capture on stage, in terms of maybe moments where, I don't know, maybe Mike was stuck in his ways and you were like, hang on a minute, you're wrong, or you're old thinking here, or whatever. Like, is that sort of what you're trying to capture, that evolution a little bit too?
Yeah, absolutely. It follows Dave's learning to try and understand, or try and get past understanding a little bit. They go through topics about identity and queerness, especially. Nico's relationships, Nico's job prospects. They're a theater student. So just these sort of things that might be tough to understand for a Gen X parent,
What draws you to the stage, Adia? Like you said that you wanted to do this, but have you done some of this in the past then in your life?
Yeah, I've been a theater kid kind of all my life. When Hamilton came out, I just opened my eyes to what theater could be.
Yeah, amazing.
And I've been in my school musical. I've wrote things before. I was like a band kid and all that stuff. So I've just kind of always been drawn to perform.
And Mike, I heard you're leaning on a production that you did of The Music Man back in the day.
Strathclyde Drama Club back in Westman in the late 80s. I was Winthrop in The Music Man, and Yeah, and from there, I like the stage as well.
What are some of the tough topics that are maybe the toughest? What do you think is the toughest scene in the show to do? And if you can't answer, because I know sometimes I ask about the theater and people go, I don't want to tell you because I don't want to give it away. But is there a way to answer that? Is there a tough moment that you guys had to get through in this?
There is, because it's so emotionally driven. There are some moments where there's like emotionally charged silences and they just feel endless. And just getting through those and staying in that emotion with being an actor, you also have to think about what's coming next. How am I presenting how I'm feeling right now? So there's a million things to remember, and those can just get very complex, and also trying to feel what's happening on stage.
Mike, were you going to add to that?
I was just going to say Dave's flaws are my flaws. So there are monologues in the play where Dave is listening to Nico, and if I go too deep into those, I get emotional because I know that Adia wrote this as sort of a cathartic experience. So,
where do you not relate to Dave? Like, are you all Dave if people are watching?
No. Dave's probably a little more conservative than I am.
Okay.
And Nico comes from a broken home. I relate to Nico in that level, whereas Adia's home is whole.
Yeah.
So
you're emotional right now. I mean, listeners can't see this. They may hear it in your voice, but people watching on YouTube might see that your eyes are a little glassy. Tell me why.
I'm proud.
Yeah.
I'm just proud.
What does it mean to you that your dad's doing this with you?
Oh, it means everything. I think it's really, really special what the kind of relationship me and my dad have, that he would do this for me. It's not a lot of parents would do something so out of their comfort zone. And it's just really, really special to me.
So lovely to have both of you here, and for putting it all out there, and you're going to do it on stage in just a couple of weeks' time. Good luck with the run. I'll tell people where they can see you. Really nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
And
Thanks
nice
so
to see you.
for having us.
You're welcome. That is Adia and Mike Branconier. They are the two stars of I Hope You Know. You can see the show coming up at the Winnipeg Fringe Festival. So I was just looking this up. For information, you can go to winnipegfringe.com. You can see everything there. The Fringe runs from July 16th to 27th. This show has 10 showings, and the venue is Creative Manitoba. But that is venue 22. I know all you Fringes are like probably already getting organized. So if you have not yet been organizing your festival dates, check out winnipegfringe.com.
What's your Canada thing? What makes you proud? What makes your patriotic soul sing? Join us at the Forks on Canada Day and tell us. CBC is bringing a digital display where you can get a picture, play our Canada Day quiz, and shout your Canada thing loud and proud. Look for CBC, proud sponsor of Canada Day at the Forks. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
His back up on his mind.
So we're listening to a bit of music from yet another artist who in the past has been longlisted for the Polaris Music Prize. We've been playing a lot of Polaris Prize nominees. This was in 2023, though, because this is Pool Blood, Miriam Said's folk project. And what we've been listening to this morning is a cover of a song by musician Alex G. It's a Pool Blood's take on the song Bobby. In case you want to add it to your playlist. Mainly sunny, common, 10 degrees in Winnipeg right now. Still ahead in the program, we have a follow from a story we had on yesterday. The Chair of Public Works is going to be on with us live responding to an East Elmwood man who was here yesterday on the show. And that man had concerns after he says a city employee went into his backyard to cut his grass. There had been a complaint about the front yard. That wasn't his only concern, though. So we're going to walk you through a little bit more of what happened and also get some of the city's response. So stay tuned for that. Right now, though, hundreds of people have left their lives behind to fight wildfires burning across the province. I'm talking about those that are out fighting the flames. 21-year-old Heather and 22-year-old Delilah Anderson are two of the youngest firefighters on their crew. Recently, the two sisters from Penamutang First Nation spent a week in Bissett putting out hotspots. For them, as you may have heard in the news, their work goes beyond helping community. It's about inspiring the next generation of young girls. When speaking with CBC's Gavin Axelrod, they shared the moment that they decided they wanted to be firefighters.
Heather, just tell me about how you got into firefighting and like how this whole thing started for you.
We found this, well, she found the program, or my mom. They told us to do it, and so she entered me in it. We went for 3 days. We learned a lot of stuff of what types of fires they are and how to know where a hot spot is and how to work a hose pump and whatnot. We got our certificate from there, and we're told to come back in May to work. So we're new, but we're doing something for our community, having other girls look up to us to see what we're doing.
Heather, I guess kind of walk me through like what's a day look like for you guys when you're out there fighting some of the fires?
It's kind of hard to push through the day because you're climbing up rocks, working in the heat. You have a whole jumpsuit on, so you can't take that off because it's like protecting from the bugs and fire. Stressful kind of, but it's kind of hard on your back when you're pulling back the hoses. The hoses they weigh like 90 pounds each, and pulled almost not 200, like more than 300 hoses we pulled out in Bissett. We moved from one location to another within 3 days.
How many hours a day were you guys out there?
18 hours.
The max
16 to 18
hours
hours.
is 18.
Start from 8 o'clock in the morning all the way down.
When you guys finally got to sleep, how did you feel?
So sore.
Yeah, sore.
And like a big relief that I can finally lay down.
When you see some of the damage from the fires and stuff and the destruction it's caused, what kind of goes through your head?
Wildlife, trees and nature.
Their homes that have been destroyed.
I love animals a lot, so when I see that, it kind of makes me feel bad, because when you step foot in there, everything's just burnt. I have thoughts like, are these trees going to be alive still, or are they dead? Because some trees you could tell they are really burnt and they're gone. And animal homes like bear dens and whatnot, they're burnt too. Puts some emotion through me when I see it.
Heather, what's it like for you when you're out there and you see some of the damage and just what these wildfires are capable of?
Sad that their homes are destroyed. Not much that you can do but put out the fires and just help the animals that need help.
Hoping it all grows back.
Yeah.
Delilah, like you guys are only in your 20s. Like what made you want to be out there?
I like helping out. It's something I like doing. I'm doing it for my babies, even if it means I have to be away from them for a while. I was young when I first had my kid. I have 3 kids. My oldest is 6. My oldest is sad that I have to leave, but once I'm home, he's all happy I'm home because he gets to see me and I get to spend time with him before I get sent back out again. Ever since my first, he's just made me push through everything, wanna do everything in life for them, whatever I want to do, because I have help from my mom, and I'm thankful for her. I'm very thankful for her. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to do this.
Were you scared at all, like out there? Like some of the fires are pretty big.
A bit, yeah. But after a while, you get used to it, and then you're making a second family out there with the crew members that you have.
And so you talked about, your mom is watching the kids. What do you think's going through your mom's head when you're out there with all these fires?
Frustration. She has 2 babies to watch and then a 2-year-old. So I know she's overwhelmed because it's just her, and my dad takes a few days off sometimes to help my mom. But now my dad took a month off just to help my mom. So we'll be going back to work pretty soon.
My little sister as well helps out whenever she can if she's home. But I know my mom and dad are really proud of us and what we're doing in life.
What kind of support have you heard from your community?
We've been posted from family and friends. They're proud of us because not much people go out and do this kind of stuff. So when they see stuff like that, it makes them proud of us that us younger ones are doing something.
I was wondering, Delilah, you kind of talked about this before, being like an inspiration to your community. Tell me about that.
There's just a lot of young girls in the community that I want them to see what they're capable of. I don't want them like, oh, this job is for guys, females can't do it. So when they see me, I want them to think that they could do it as well.
You've only done a week out there so far, but you're going to do 20 more days.
We have to wait until the rest of our crew comes back home and they're done their 4-day break before we get sent out for the full 20 days.
Wow, so 20 days. What do you think it's going to be like out there for 20 days straight?
Really rough. Rough, I know. I know how it's going to be now, and I for sure know what extra things to pack.
Just my last question. Whoever wants to answer this, what do you hope all the young girls back in your community think about you guys?
Oh, I hope they can put their mind to it because I know they can.
Yeah, I want to see these girls do something. I want them to go forward in their big dreams, whether it's a firefighter, a police officer.
Don't talk about it, just do it. Put your mind to it, and then you'll get there.
I love that. What a great spirit, and big thanks to them for their service throughout these fires. Delilah and Heather Anderson, firefighters from Pneumotang First Nation, sisters. I love that you can hear their kids in the background there too. They were in conversation there with CBC's Gavin Axelrod. As you heard, the Andersons plan to head back out with their crew early next month. It is now 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. Heather Wells is here with other news updates. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, some people are preparing to return to Flin Flon. About 5,100 had to flee the city almost a month ago as a massive wildfire burned nearby. But the city is lifting the mandatory evacuation order tomorrow. Guy Rideout and his partner have been staying in the Paw. He says it is a relief to go home, but he expects a lot of emotions. Stats Canada is just out with the latest in inflation, and nationally, inflation was 1.7% in May. Here in Manitoba, inflation slipping slightly from 2.1% to now 1.9%. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
Traffic's fine. Temperatures 10 degrees, sunshine, and really windy and a possible storm later. So speaking of packing and what to wear, I'm going to bring everything today just in case later today on the way home you get rained on. This next half hour of the show right after 8 o'clock, we're going to follow up on a story we had on yesterday. Wayne Moody was here in studio. He lives in East Elmwood. Says he feels like he's between a rock and a hard place. The city warned him his grass was too tall. He acknowledges it was. But then it was well below guidelines, he said, after he cut it. Then they sent him another notice. They showed up the next day. They ended up in his backyard, even though the problem was with his front yard. He's facing a bill for the work. We're going to talk to the Chair of Public Works about all this. Stay tuned. That's coming up live after 8. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team at Information Radio, and World Report is next.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger, sitting in for Tom Power. Misty Copeland was the first Black woman to become principal dancer at American Ballet Theatre 10 years ago. We'll talk about her incredible career ahead of her retirement from ballet this fall.
I remember just that feeling of accomplishment.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Susan Ormiston. Mark Carney is in Europe today meeting with NATO allies, and the agenda is vast. From the wars in Iran and Ukraine to calls for more military spending to Donald Trump. A lot is on the line. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Donald Trump is not happy with the Iran-Israel ceasefire. It is teetering. The U.S. president proposed the deal, and both sides agreed. But hours later, Israel accused Iran of firing rockets into Israeli territory and struck back with an attack on Tehran. The CBC's Chris Brown is following developments from Jerusalem, and a warning, you are about to hear some strong language from the U.S. president.
With his helicopter revving in the background, Donald Trump sounded incensed that the ceasefire between Israel and Iran he had only announced a few hours earlier might be about to implode.
But I'm not happy that Israel's going out now. There was one rocket that I guess was fired overboard. It was after the time limit, and it missed its target. And now Israel's going out. These guys got to calm down.
Trump was presumably referring to immense airstrikes on Tehran that Israel executed just in advance of the deadline he set for the bombing to stop. Iran also fired rockets at Israel at the last minute, killing 4 people in Beersheba.
But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel.
Trump then dropped his own bomb, an F-bomb.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Israel's President Isaac Herzog toured the damage at the site of the latest and perhaps final Iranian attack.
We have done successfully in this operation is to remove the Iranian nuclear threat looming above Israel.
Iran's leadership is also framing the ceasefire as a win, claiming Israel was forced to accept defeat, even though the regime suffered severe losses of its top generals, scientists, and its nuclear facilities. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Prime Minister Mark Carney says Iran's missile launch at a U.S. base in Qatar last night was proportionate and de-escalatory, but it did put Canadian soldiers in danger. Here he is speaking to CNN's Christiane Amanpour.
I mean, we never welcome, obviously, hostilities and reactions, but it appears to have been previewed, which allowed, and they're Canadian soldiers at the Qatari base as well.
Did you get them out of harm's way?
They were out of harm's way, yes.
He says Iran's actions leave an opening for diplomacy, and it could leave an opening for a broader ceasefire in the Middle East, including in Gaza. Palestinian witnesses and hospitals say Israeli forces have again opened fire on hundreds of people waiting for aid. Video on social media show casualties being brought to hospitals in Gaza City. The incident happened this morning at a food distribution site run by a U.S. contractor. Witnesses say there was gunfire from tanks and drones on the crowd. At least 25 people were killed. The Israeli military says it only fires warning shots to control crowds. Gaza's health authority says more than 56,000 Palestinians have been killed since the Israel-Hamas war began. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is telling NATO leaders their solidarity with Ukraine is the best way to disrupt Russia's war effort.
Russia is using not only its oil revenues for defense, but also the resources of regimes like North Korea and Iran, and Russia's corrupt connections in other countries.
Zelensky was speaking this past hour in The Hague at the annual NATO Leaders Summit. But unlike in previous years, the war in Ukraine does not appear to be the focus of these talks. Murray Brewster is there.
Originally, it was expected to be a broad, bold agenda focusing on Russia. This year's NATO summit, however, has been narrowed in scope to perhaps a single catchphrase: show me the money.
I'm not comfortable at all with the 5% figure.
Bart De Wever is the Prime Minister of Belgium, who remains a little gobsmacked at what allies are being asked to invest.
We've jumped to 2%. We're more or less in the same situation as Canada.
Canada arrives at the summit fresh off Prime Minister Mark Carney's pledge to increase defense spending by $9.3 billion this year in order to meet the existing 2% target. Member nations have agreed to increase the target to a combined 5% of GDP, 3.5% for direct military funding, and an additional 1.5% for defense infrastructure. They'll meet that pledge by 2035. Veteran Canadian diplomat, now Senator Peter Beam, says avoiding the target will be hard in the current climate with the Trump administration.
There may not be much of a choice.
In a change from past years, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will be invited to only attend this year's leaders' dinner and not the meeting of allies. Despite the downgrading, NATO insists Ukraine remains a top priority. Murray Brewster, CBC News, The Hague.
The effects of a catastrophic failure at the Eagle gold mine in Yukon are still being felt downstream. It's been 1 year since part of the site collapsed. Cyanide spilled into waterways surrounding the mine. It caused environmental contamination and a downturn in Yukon's economy. As Cheryl Kawaja reports, people in the nearby village of Mayo are still grieving.
And these are the wild roses here. They just came out. Everything's kind of late this year.
Gathering traditional medicine near her village of Mayo, Yukon, Crystal Prophet says it's all still very raw for her.
We used to go up that way and call moose our hunting grounds. And with that whole spill, I mean, it went into the underground water, right?
The Eagle Gold Mine was the largest operating mine in the Yukon. It produced gold by dousing a heap of crushed ore with cyanide solution. But the heap collapsed in a massive slide, cyanide flowing. It was close to shift change, and no workers died, but hundreds of jobs were lost. For many citizens of the Notchonayak Dun First Nation, it's the environmental destruction that hurts most.
Pissed me off because of their neglect, all the devastation.
It's a catastrophe.
John Stryker is the Yukon Minister of Mines. There is now water treatment happening, but he says it will be a long time before all the cyanide is gone. Stryker says new water storage helped prep for the spring freshet, the recent snowmelt. He says there were concerns for a second slide with the melt.
Now we've just made it through freshet. We did manage to not overwhelm the system. I always say knock on wood.
An independent review is expected in the coming weeks. But for many, like Prophet in Mayo, the what and why of the mine failure is of little consequence.
A lot of people are grieving, and for people to even want to talk to you about it right now is so fresh,
Cheryl Kawaja, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Statistics Canada says the annual pace of inflation held steady at 1.7% in May. It says there were slower increases in rent and mortgages. And Ontario, in particular, saw some rent relief from slower population growth and a jump in new housing supply. StatsCan says the removal of the consumer carbon price is also still tempering annual inflation at the gas pumps. Core inflation figures also showed signs of modest easing. That is something the Bank of Canada will be paying close attention to before its next interest rate decision on July 30th. Voters in 3 Alberta by-elections are keeping with the status quo. Separatist candidates failed to win seats in the provincial legislature, but Naheed Nenshi won a seat nearly a year after he became the new leader of the Alberta NDP. Karina Zapata has the details.
The MLA for Edmonton Strathcona, our leader, Naheed Nenshi.
It didn't take long after polls closed for that result to come in. A vacant seat in Edmonton Strathcona will soon be Naheed Nenshi's. The leader of the Alberta NDP says he already has a goal in mind: to become the province's next premier.
It was a 3-step process: win the leadership, get a seat in the House, and now we win the general election.
In the southern suburbs of Edmonton, Gurtej Singh Brar won the by-election in Edmonton-Ellerslie, leaving Alberta's capital city as an NDP fortress. But in central Alberta, the United Conservative Party will keep its seat in the mostly rural riding of Old Didsbury Three Hills, where farmer and political newcomer Tara Sawyer has won.
I think it sends a clear message to the federal government. Alberta's had enough,
and it's time they take us seriously and they start listening to us.
While candidates backing separation were on the ballots, none were successful in their attempts to win. Still, Cam Davies, leader of the Republican Party of Alberta, says he won't give up.
This is just the beginning. We're not going away. We've got a lot of work to do. We're rolling up our sleeves, and the work starts now.
Davies says he's working for a growing number of Conservatives in Alberta who are frustrated with the status quo. Karina Zapata, CBC News, Calgary.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on Portage Ave. Thanks for joining us. Lots of sunshine out there, but be warned, weather is going to shift a little bit for us. So it's going to be windy this afternoon, and we also are going to possibly see a little bit of rain. Your full forecast is coming up in just a moment here on Information Radio. Well, coming up, the Chair of Public Works for the city will join us live and respond to an East Elmwood man's concerns after a city employee went into his backyard to cut the grass, even though there were complaints about his front yard. He's also on the hook for some fines that he feels he should not have to be paying. So we're going to walk you through the story in case you missed the initial interview yesterday with this resident from Winnipeg. In addition, we're asking you to weigh in this morning on a couple of things. We're asking about Portage in Maine, the big opening happening on Friday. We're going to be live at Portage in Maine. So we'd love it if you'd let us know how you're feeling about that. And what are your questions about the transit changes that begin on Sunday? You can leave those on the listener line at 204-788-3205. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells for other news developing here across the province. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a Gimli flight school has been banned from training more pilots. Transport Canada says it revoked LS Airways Flight Academy certification in the interest of public safety. Wayne Liu says he was among students who blew the whistle on the school. In a lawsuit, he says its owner told him to fake flight hours on his training record. Liu's lawsuit says the school failed to follow aviation rules and put students in significant danger. None of the claims have been proven in court. We'll hear more about that. And a pair of sisters from Pinnimutang First Nation are among those fighting wildfires in Manitoba this summer. 21-year-old Heather Anderson and her sister Delilah got trained last year in Gypsumville. They were recently fighting fires in eastern Manitoba. They say they hope to set an example for their children and inspire other young girls to set their mind to do whatever they want. I'll be back with more Manitoba News at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into this forecast now with Abby Adiemi.
It's a warm-up kind of day across the province. The south is already getting warmer with we're expecting some warm air later in the day, whilst to see cool temperatures in the north. Winnipeg right now, 12 degrees. We're starting the day with lots of sunshine, but as we head into the afternoon, the clouds will mix in and we'll see that chance of thunderstorms later today. It's going to be a warm one. We're going to get to 26 with a humidex factored in. It will be feeling close to 28, 29. And similar conditions we're seeing in the southern part of the province from Brandon all the way down to Gimli. We're seeing 13 degrees already. Up north, cooler, 7 and 12 degrees. That's what we're seeing up there. It's going to be a mix of sun and clouds as well. Overall, it will be warm and windy across the south with a chance of thunderstorms later, while up north remains warm. Winnipeg at 12 degrees right now.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Sierra Sanders, still quiet in traffic?
It is quiet on the commuter line this morning. Things are moving along out there. There's still some time left in the show, so if there's anything slowing you down, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, a Winnipeg man is hoping for some answers after he says a City of Winnipeg employee let themselves into his backyard to cut his grass. Wayne Moody lives on Talbot Avenue in East Elmwood. He says he did get a notice from the city around June 11th that the grass on this boulevard was too tall. Now, he says he did cut his grass. It was well below 6 inches, so he ignored it. He picks up the story from here.
17th, I got a notice in another notice in my mailbox saying that they're going to do an inspection and remediate it on the 18th.
Okay.
So I called them, got no answer. I phoned them, I've emailed them. I've got no response from either.
Yep.
On the 18th, my alarm system went off because they were in my backyard. I don't know why they were in my backyard when they're complaining about the boulevard to start off with.
What were they doing in your backyard?
Cutting the grass. That was about 1.5 inches long.
So listen, you have a house like most people that have homes in Winnipeg. You've got a front yard that I'm guessing is public view.
Yep.
The boulevard's public view.
Yeah.
Is your backyard fenced or is it?
Yes, it's fenced, and the fence you can't open it from the outside unless you climb up over the top of it, reach down, and grab the latch on the inside.
So what'd you think when someone's back there cutting your grass?
Well, I couldn't understand why they were in the back there doing it, being that this complaint was supposedly of the front boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
And it had all been cut already. So I spoke to the lady over the camera, which doesn't get recorded, unfortunately, on my camera. And she said, oh, yeah, there was a few high patches on the boulevard. So I asked her, well, why are you in my backyard cutting the grass then? And she just walked away.
So Janice Lukes is councillor for Waverley West Ward and chair of Public Works and here to respond to this. Good morning.
Well, good morning, Marcy.
I saw you leaning in and listening and also probably watching some of the video because there was video of the city worker in the backyard there. What do you say to this?
Well, I've not heard anything about this till just now. It's odd. I will say it's very odd. When I looked and leaned in to see how long the grass was in the backyard, I really can't speak to this particular incident. I would encourage Wayne to send me his address and I'll get to the bottom of this because that was kind of funky what was going on in the backyard, in my opinion.
Was it wrong for a city employee to be in the backyard? Because people might listen to this and think, people can complain about my backyard grass, it's fenced in and the city can come in and do that? Or was all not supposed to happen?
Well, I'll speak in general terms, not specifically about this case because I don't really know what was going on here. But in many situations, I've seen grasses and weeds in backyards 5-6 feet tall. So the city will provide warnings. They'll encourage people and help educate them on the program, on the bylaw, the neighborhood livability bylaw. And then if the resident doesn't comply, if there's staffing, they will go in and mow it, weed it, like what's happening in the video.
So this neighborhood livability bylaw does apply to our fenced areas on our private property.
Yeah. Front, back, and then the boulevard, the public property that the homeowner is responsible for.
Why? Because I feel like my backyard is sort of my sanctuary, and for someone to complain about it, then they're what? They're looking over the fence, they're annoyed by the height. What do you say to people who might feel like it shouldn't apply to that? I mean, a front yard is a little bit maybe different. You can understand that logically. Why does the city feel that this should apply to the backyard?
Not all backyards have fences. Not all backyards have high fences. Not all front yards have fences. So it's a law related to the property itself. Front, back, side.
Can the city enter? I guess they can because this happened. I mean, are city workers supposed to be just entering your yard like that without permission or a homeowner on site, like reaching over? Because what if a dog had been in the backyard and got out, or what if there had been an incident? And then I, as a homeowner, I'm liable then if something happened with the city? I find it quite shocking they were in the yard.
Yeah, well, front, back, I mean, what's the difference? I mean, the front can be fenced off with a gate and a dog. The back can be fenced off with a gate and a dog. It can have no fence, the front or the back. The bylaw, the way it's written, does allow the city to go on the property to deal after warnings, after proper documentation is done, does allow the city to go in and deal with the vegetation.
So people have to be prepared for that then. Like if you do have an animal that's in the yard and such, you should know that a city worker could come and open your gate and they could be in there with the dog or whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah.
Do you think there's cause to relook at the bylaw, just given some of the concerns around that or around the backyard being more private space?
Well, every year, every spring, we go through this. We have the same conversations. And at this point, no one has felt it necessary to look at the bylaw. I don't feel it's necessary to look at the bylaw. Not every yard has a high fence in the backyard. I've seen vegetation 5-6 feet tall in the backyard. When you live in an urban environment, we have bylaws. And the bylaws are to create neighborhood livability. Everyone's perspective of neighborhood livability varies. I understand that. An example that we have a lot of, that I had a lot of when I was the councillor for Fort Richmond, was parking vehicles in the front yard. Multiple vehicles in the front yard.
Mm-hmm.
That's a neighborhood bylaw violation. Parking.
I don't want to get too far away from into the different bylaws. I want to stay with the grass for a moment. Do you know if Mr. Moody's going to be charged for the work that the employee did on his property on June 18th? Only because
no idea.
You don't know. Okay.
I don't know the case.
Okay. So you want more details on the case. You saw the video there. You can see sort of how high the grass was, which was not anywhere near not high at all.
No.
So because it wasn't high at all, is there a chance that he might in fact get reimbursement, perhaps, just based on what you visually seen there?
I don't know the case, but I know that when humans are involved in making decisions, sometimes the best decisions aren't always made. So when I see that video and I see the person weed whacking the vegetation, which doesn't look even knee height, I have to think that there is some sort of decision that was made that may not be accurate, because from when I watched the video, it doesn't look like it's a big issue compared to what are big issues out there.
Got it. Now, to be clear here how this happens, because Mr. Moody was asking about how this happens, how this works, why one homeowner would get a notice, another nearby owner wouldn't. This is complaint driven. Is that correct?
All the bylaws in the city are complaint driven.
Okay. What about the appeal process? He also shared that he had 2 days to appeal after getting the initial notice on the 11th or 12th. He says that would cost $250 to appeal. He was feeling that's too tight a window. Especially, he says his grass was already well below 6 inches, was being acceptable. Does he have other options, or can we extend the appeal process window, do you think?
Well, I found it very interesting in this case that he got a notification for his backyard, and I think he had 2 days notice, or was it even 1 day notice?
Yeah, it was an initial notice on the 11th or 12th. So pardon me, it was too tight. He says he had the appeal window was 2 days.
Yeah. Well, again, when humans are involved, sometimes things go off the rails. This sounds like it went off the rails. I don't have enough details on this.
Okay.
What I've really learned is you need to get all the details in this job, because there's many varying aspects.
Is it worth it, even though this is one case, and you say this comes up all the time, I wonder if it's worth changing some of these things, like even having a complaint-based system? Are there other ways to go about it that maybe other cities do that are more straight ahead and not based on complaints?
Well, I think anything in the city, there's always ways to improve things. There's always ways to look at issues. We did improve our vegetation bylaw. The city used to go out 3 or 4 times to give reminders, which was ridiculous because it just was a waste of time. One education paper, and giving people, my understanding is it's 7 to 10 days notice. That's my understanding. And in that 7 to 10 days, if the person can't deal with the issues, then the city comes back, sees if the resident is home, and if they are, they talk to them. If they're not, then they'll mow the lawn.
What's your advice to someone who might feel that they've been unfairly handed a notice and that their lawn needs attention? Should they be calling the city directly? Should they be going through their counselor? What's your advice?
I would think they could call their counselor. That's what we're here for, to help residents. They can call 311. Either one.
Anything to add, Janice Lukes, about the bylaw, or about where people should read more about what they should expect this summer?
Yeah, you could just Google bylaws on the city website. Sorry, I have a cold. You could Google it. You can call your counselor. But I guess the main thing, and people get very worked up about this bylaw, along with many other bylaws. The main thing is we live in an urban environment, and we do require bylaws. Not everyone agrees with them, but it's part of the deal of living in an urban environment. Some people are very passionate about this, I can tell you, very passionate that they want to see the bylaw enforced and people keeping their vegetation below 6 inches. Other people don't care. So it's one of these issues, like many in the city, where you can't please everyone.
Well, in the meantime, we'll keep you on the line if you don't mind, and we will get you, as requested, Mr. Moody's contact information so you can follow through on what you called, an unusual case here. So maybe there's some recourse here for him. But thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
So Janice Lukes, councillor for Waverley West Ward, chair of Public Works for the City of Winnipeg, on with us live on CBC via Zoom.
Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill is one of the biggest debut albums of all time. But you ought to know that just 1 year prior to its release, she was rejected by every major label. So what changed everything? From the creators of Under the Influence comes the summer series We Regret to Inform You. Wednesday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland and on demand on CBC Listen.
What's your Canada thing? What makes you proud? What makes your patriotic soul sing? Join us at the Forks on Canada Day and tell us. CBC is bringing a digital display where you can get a picture, play our Canada Day quiz, and shout your Canada thing loud and proud. Look for CBC, proud sponsor of Canada Day at the Forks. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
You know this. You know what's coming. It's 9 to 5. Dolly Parton back on stage. She's going to play Vegas for 6 shows.
And I stumble to the kitchen, pour myself a cup of ambition, and yawn and stretch and try to come to life. Jump in the shower and the blood starts pumping. Out on the streets the traffic starts jumping with folks like me on the job from 9 to 5. Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living. Barely getting by, it's all taking and no giving. They just use your mind. Won't seem to let me. I swear sometimes that man is out to get me. They let you dream just to watch him shatter. You're just a step on the boss man's ladder, but you got dreams he'll never take away. In the same boat with a lot of your friends, waiting for the day your ship will come in and the tide's gonna turn and it's all gonna roll your way. Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living. Barely getting by, it's all taking and no giving. They just use your mind and you never get the credit. It's enough to drive you crazy if you let it. 9 to 5, yeah, they got you where they want you. There's a better life, and you think about it, don't you? It's a rich man's game. What they call it, and you spend your life putting money in his wallet. 9 to 5, what a way to make a living. Barely getting by, it's all taking and no giving. They just use your mind and they never give you credit. It's enough to drive you crazy if you let it. 9 to 5.
Well, she's pushing 80, but don't let that stop you. She left touring in 2016, but don't let that stop you. Dolly Parton coming back on stage. She has just announced a 6-show run at Caesars in Las Vegas. It's in December if you want to grab the friends and go. Her run's December 4th to the 13th. Unbelievable.
Just incredible.
Right?
Do you remember, I think it was like a year ago or so, she put on a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader outfit, and she looked fantastic.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Good for Dolly. That's Marjorie Dalhouse. She's in to tell us what's coming up on Radio Noon in the call-in today.
So tomorrow, the province is set to unveil a proposed plan for the intersection of the Trans-Canada Highway and Highway 5. As we know, there was that tragic crash there 2 years ago. And then we also, CBC News reported on a report report that was done 20 years ago about that exact intersection. So we're asking you today, before the plans are unveiled tomorrow, what do you want to see with that intersection? There have been open houses. There are 3 options here that people are we're looking at. There was an overpass, an R-cut, and widened medians. So we want to hear from you ahead of what's going to be released tomorrow. What would you like to see there? What would improve safety at that intersection, or even on highways here in Manitoba? Give us a call after 12:30 with your thoughts and your questions and comments.
All right. Thanks, Marjorie.
Thanks, Marcy.
So that's an important one. Of course, whether you live in the Dauphin-Carberry area or whether you just travel to Trans-Canada, you've been by there, you've been through there west of Winnipeg. So you can weigh in today on what you would like to see at that intersection. And of course, CBC will have full coverage of what the province has to say about the direction they're going to be going. But weigh in. And pardon me, those open houses still to come as well, as Marjorie said. So we're not quite at the stage where they're going to tell us where they're going. They still want to hear more from you. So let's get that started here on CBC between 12:30 and 1 on the call-in. If you want to call now and weigh in, maybe it's ahead of work, you're going to be busy around lunchtime, but you care about the issue, you can call the listener line. Marge will get it, and she'll find those calls before noon. It's 788-3797. Your CBC Winnipeg News at 8:30 is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. It's sunny, a little bit of a south breeze. We're at 12 degrees right now. We are going to warm up to a windy 26 this afternoon, risk of a late day thunderstorm. A Gimli flight school has been banned from training more pilots. Transport Canada says it revoked LS Airways Flight Academy certification in the interest of public safety. Wayne Liu says he was among students who blew the whistle on the school. He says in a lawsuit, its owner told him to fake flight hours for his training record.
I was telling myself, hey, I shouldn't do this because of this school. I feel so depressed, wasted money and time in here.
Liu's lawsuit says the school failed to follow aviation rules and put students in significant danger. Lawsuits filed by other students allege LS Airways also exploited them. None of the claims have been tested in court. The school's owner, in a statement of defense, says they followed proper procedures but declined to comment to CBC. People of Flin Flon are getting set to head back home. The city was evacuated May 28th as a massive wildfire burned nearby. But with fire crews making progress, the city is lifting its mandatory evacuation order tomorrow. Guy Rideout and his partner have been staying at a hotel in DePaul with their 2 dogs and 1 cat.
We are 100 times more fortunate than Denair Beach. They had terrible, terrible loss of upwards of 200 to 300 structures, which includes lots of homes. We've got away quite scot-free. The outlying areas of a lot of cabin resort homes. Some of them weren't so lucky.
Some people from Creighton, Saskatchewan and Denair Beach were allowed to return over the weekend. A pair of sisters from Pinemutang First Nation are among those fighting the wildfires this summer. 21-year-old Heather Anderson and her sister Delilah got trained last year in Gypsumville. They recently were fighting fires in eastern Manitoba. Anderson says the days are long and exhausting, but she's happy to help.
Anything that's burning, we put it out. Anything that's like the moss would be burning, so we would have to pour like a bunch of water on that, dig it out, and like flip over logs to make sure it's not burning still.
The sisters are also both young moms and hope to set an example for their children. They also, they say, want to inspire young girls to set their minds to do anything they want. Well, the ceasefire agreement announced between Israel and Iran appears to be in jeopardy, and U.S. President Donald Trump isn't happy about it.
We basically have 2 countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Trump speaking to reporters earlier this morning in Washington. His comments come after the Israeli military says Iran violated the ceasefire by firing a missile into northern Israel. Israel's defense minister says he has ordered the military to respond with full force on targets in the heart of Tehran. Statistics Canada is reporting inflation held steady in May. It says the rate came in last month at 1.7%, which is where it was in April. Rent and mortgage costs eased off slightly, and the recent removal of the consumer carbon price continues to temper prices at the gas pumps. All of this being taken into account by the Bank of Canada as it prepares for its next interest setting at the end of next month. In Manitoba, inflation slipped from 2.1% to 1.9% last month. Winnipeggers may not get a choice about whether they want the city to install new smart water meters in their homes. A new report recommends against giving people the choice to opt out of that program. Some people raised concerns about potential health impacts and security issues related to the new technology. But the city says there is no health risk, and the data transmitted by the meters is secure. Water and Waste Chair Ross Eady says there may be other options.
What other cities have done is they can install the antenna just on the outside where it's located, or if an individual wants, the antenna could be set up at the property line. The other cities, they don't do that for free, though.
The new meters will automatically transmit water usage data to the city and can detect leaks immediately. Classic cars are a common sight on Manitoba roads, especially in the summer, but finding mechanics to repair them is becoming more of a challenge. Sam Sanders is one of few working mechanics in the province who know how to repair classic vehicles. He has worked at a Portage Avenue garage for more than 40 years. He says cars of that era were almost entirely mechanical and operated on carburetors as opposed to the fuel-injected vehicles of today.
A lot of cars like this they're hobbies now. They're not the main group of cars that people drive.
And at RRC Polytech in Winnipeg, the chair of the Automotive Trades Department says the focus is on preparing mechanics for what they will deal with in the current market. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather Walls.
You're welcome.
Also, thanks to Megan Ketchison and Joni Nicolo. That's our live news team this morning. In studio, our live team, Abby Adiemi, Brad Lillies, and Sierra Sanders. Woohoo! Can't do this without you guys, of course. Big team here in the morning, up early in bright-eyed. Love it. Also, the associate producers who worked on today's show in particular, thank you to Ashrit Vaidya, to Chide Kuma, to Marshall Hodgins, our associate producers. And our leaders in unit, Nellie Gonzalez is away, and so we just want to give thanks to Robin Summerfield, who's been producing the daily shows, and to Leif Larson, who's a senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. With a quick last mention of traffic, again,
not much to mention. It was a pretty quiet day. Wow. Yesterday, today, I guess, beginning of the week, quiet on the roads here, but lots of changes coming here in the upcoming week, I guess, with transit and Portage Main opening. So keep your eyes and ears out for that.
No doubt. And watch for the grads, too. They're all over the place right now this week. Lots of those beautiful pictures being taken. Going to be a nice day for that, Abby.
Yeah, breezy and warm in the south, cooler and mix of sunshine and clouds in the north. We'll see highs around 26.
All right, that's it. We're live from Portage and Main Friday. Just another reminder of that. Hopefully we'll see you there. And otherwise, remember the Currents coming up next here on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Take care. You've been with 89.3 FM.